Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Comic Book Chronicles. All right, it's the extended cut apparently. I am your host, Roddykat, and you can find me at Roddykat on Twitter. You can also find me at News Nerds Need on Twitter. You can also find me at You can also find me at CB Caps on Instagram. And that sound effect you hear is being provided by no other than our man in Brooklyn, Agent_70 on Twitter and Instagram.
What's up, everybody?
No sleep till Brooklyn!
Indeed. And not with us tonight, and I feel like I need to stop doing this, but not with us tonight, PCN_Dirt on Twitter, Pop Culture Net on Twitter, popculturenetwork.com, and his umbrella sites therein, and also Byte, BYTE, the new Vine replacement. Under, he is under Comic Reviews, no vowels.
I was a little quick trigger there.
No, it was my fault because I actually had stopped and forgot. So, also not with us tonight is the Osiris Says Ish, Tim DOGG98 on Twitter, CB Chron on Twitter, which is the Comic Book Chronicles Twitter account, The Click Nation on Twitter, theclicknation.com. That's DKLIQNATION. Excuse me. Also, Comic Book Resources, where he's over there writing his face off.
It would have been nice to have Tim on the show tonight because this really is, as the back of the trade paperback mentions, the first X-Men event.
Yeah, him being a big X-Men fan, or at least probably the bigger one out of all of us.
Oh, no, I was about to say at least as big as any of us because we all have varying degrees. I obviously have a big physical run of X-Men as well.
Right.
So, but it would be interesting to get his take, and I look forward to maybe reaching out behind the scenes to Tim to ask him about this event. So sorry to interrupt. Carry on.
Oh no, you're good. Yeah, hopefully he'll want to be on the show at some point. But yes, you can find this here podcast on the Coastal of the Podcast Network at cspn.us.
Do it today.
And you can also find this podcast at your podcast perusal place of choice, whether it be Google Play, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or the Cold Slither Podcast Network's SoundCloud page. Tonight, folks, we got a treat for you, but instead of me just telling you right now, I will wait till we get to that point. But so first, we will get into the news. And we start off as we do every week about this time with the cinematic news. First up, oh yeah, I guess that was the first one to put in. Batwoman casts Alpha's star as Bruce Wayne. So now the Arrowverse has a Bruce Wayne, for some reason, because I guess all bets are off. Nowadays, because they did say that they had once upon a time said, we're not doing any Batman stuff for anybody who's who's had movies, blah blah blah. But it is what it is. Even though Green Arrow was basically Batman, so yeah. And this is kind of a spoiler for, I guess, the season finale of season 1 of Batwoman, so I won't go too far into it. But I guess Bruce Wayne comes into the picture. Next up.
I was about to say, you know what happens when they start mentioning people I don't know.
Who?
Anyway, next up, in, I guess, surprising news, Batwoman actress Ruby Rose has announced her plans to leave the series, vacating the title role ahead of the currently in development second season, scheduled to premiere in 2021. Ruby Rose issued a statement on her departure, but she did not spell out her reasons for leaving the show. I don't know if we have other news stories on this.
Related to, not necessarily about this.
Okay, I just wanted to add that in, when I saw this when I saw this news drop the other day, of course, I was shocked and disappointed and wanted to learn a little bit more about it. And I read, obviously reports. So these are mostly rumor, but based on some uh, bits of fact here and there, that's Ruby Rose wasn't exactly the most pleasant person to work with on the screen, simply because she seemed to not be ready for the rigors of being a lead actress in one of these CW superhero shows. It's fairly demanding, being the lead and being in costume for a significant amount of time while you're on set. So um, it may not have been what she expected. Either way, I think, or at least from what I read, it was supposed to be somewhat mutual. Like, she wanted out, and they weren't exactly thrilled with the way she was acting on set.
Mm-hmm.
But, unfortunately for the haters who are, there's a multitude of them online. It's unfortunately something that they can chalk up in their column.
Or they will definitely try to. So, man, that is the sad fact in all of this.
Yep.
But moving right along, in related news, Stephanie Beatrix wants to be Ruby Rose's replacement for Batwoman. So after the news of Ruby Rose's departure, and the CW still going to be going ahead and doing a second series, obviously they're going to be looking for a new person to play Batwoman. It says Beatrix wrote on Twitter that she reads everything about Batwoman, indicates she's a hardcore fan of the character, and that she's willing to move to Gotham for the role. And if you don't know that name, she's on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And I'm okay with that, actually, if that happens, because she's actually all right. Not actually all right. Didn't mean to sound like that, but she's kind of dope. So.
And responses.
Mm-hmm.
Who?
Oh, I guess you don't watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I've only seen a couple of episodes myself, but I've kind of seen her and a couple of the cast members because the one there on Twitter and other places. I think she's done some other thing I've actually seen, but I can't remember right now. But hey, she basically plays a detective on 9-9 from Brooklyn, as the setting says, it's from Brooklyn. So hey, there you go. Let's give you a reason to watch right there. And that's that. Everybody knows that's the Andy Samberg joint. Anyway, next up.
So thanks to shutdowns caused by COVID-19, Batwoman's first season ended early, which denied the show the opportunity to add a Supergirl cameo in the last episode. Essentially what happened in the finale that aired, there's some issues with kryptonite, and they were supposed to zoom in to a photo frame in Kate Kane's library, and the photo that was supposed to be in the frame was supposed to be of Kate with Kara Danvers, aka Supergirl, but they weren't able to get that done because of COVID-19.
Yep. So there you go. That is that. Moving right along. Legends Tomorrow just aired its deadliest episode yet.
This is a running theme tonight.
Apparently. That was the news was unintentionally involved in this. So Legends Tomorrow's latest episode was a massacre, if that gives you a hint of which saw the deaths of many beloved characters from the show. And I haven't seen this episode, so I don't know what's going on. But basically, it says Legends of Tomorrow are dead. Long live the legends. And I Am Legends, the latest episode, the team fights against Greek fates, Lachesis and Atropos, came to a head. While the legends were busy securing the chalice of Dionysus, the Fates commandeered the Wave Rider with Astra and Gary Green on board. With the power of the gods and a time-traveling ship, the Fates managed to kill all of the legends except their sister Charlie. So, yeah, apparently that happened, and it kind of goes on from there. And apparently there's a and apparently there's a loophole as to how they got out of their predicament. So we'll see how that works out for them. Next up,
Right. Next up, so The Mandalorian season 2 on Disney Plus has picked up a relatively known name actor in Timothy Oliphant. And I say relatively because it's not someone that jumps out at you, but it's a recognizable name. He played a hard-nosed cop named Raylan Givens on Justified. I know that was a somewhat popular show. And now he's bringing his power and swagger to the Star Wars universe. The Hollywood Reporter broke the news that he's going to be joining season 2 of The Mandalorian, but there's still no word on the character he'd be playing. It could be somebody new and heretofore unknown, such as the characters played by Bill Burr and Natalia Tena in season 1, or it could be somebody that already exists. Like I'm not going to name these characters because we know who they are. So the speculation continues.
right? And before you said what you said, he also played Hitman, one of the Hitman movies. But before you said what you said, I was going to say that maybe I guess because of that, and he played a hitman, he might be a bounty hunter. Maybe he'll be another Mandalorian. Who knows? But some would say that his casting was justified.
Oh no!
Ooh, I'm dying!
Hey, that's about as good as you're gonna get from me tonight, folks. So got to deal with it. Next up, due to thanks to a report that I probably shouldn't be taking, but you take with a grain of salt. Ahsoka Tano show is in development at Disney Plus. So this is a report. This is a rumor. There's nothing official about this at all. But this person that does rumors a lot that sometimes is correct. Apparently, says that that a Ahsoka Tano show of some kind is in development at Disney Plus. It's not outside the realm of possibility that it could be actually happening. But again, this is still rumor, so take it for what it is. Next up.
Next up, the Clone Wars: Why the Jedi Never Rose Up Again After Order 66 and Revenge of the Sith. In an interview with Deadline, showrunner Dave Filoni of the Clone Wars offered insight on the Jedi post Order 66. The seasoned Lucasfilm creator revealed he had even discussed the topic with George Lucas himself. According to Filoni, the reason why we never saw too many Jedis fighting against the Empire is the fact that they were dead, and that a lot of them felt that they had failed in their goal to protect the Republic, and they were all deceived. He clarified further by stating, so a lot of them realized that fighting a war maybe isn't the best way and created violence. They set their sabers down. They tried to find different paths to helping people than perhaps, being violent. And so there is an old idea there. And also they got shot in the back. So
a lot of them, yeah. But yeah, there you go. Next up, Gargoyles, the Disney show that so many people love so much, was nearly the center of a vast Disney cinematic universe.
I believe it.
Yeah. So this is actually, I will go ahead and take this next one too because it's kind of related. But apparently, also O.J. Simpson helped kill the show. According to creator Greg Weisman, I suspect, and I didn't read this article fully, so I fully believe that probably part of this came out around the time that the O.J. chase happened or something, and therefore was on a lot of people's TVs, and therefore probably interrupted a whole lot of things. Again, I hadn't read this article, so I'm not entirely sure.
Probably the trial stuff.
Yeah, either that or the trials.
Right. Yeah, it wouldn't be the chase because I know what that interrupted. That interrupted the NBA Finals. I'm a Knicks fan, and I remember that all too well, and it still hurts to this day.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was probably the trial stuff because it was like always on TV in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
That makes some sense.
But either way, this is a long, a lengthy, I would say, interview with Greg Weisman about the Gargoyles and stuff around it, and that if you're so interested, and check it out, it'll be in the show notes. And following up on that, Greg Weisman wants to team up with Jordan Peele for a live action Gargoyles. So, says Gargoyles co-creator Greg Weisman has admitted he'd love to make a live action movie of the 90s cartoon with Jordan Peele directing. I don't know if this is coming from the same article or not, but I'm just going to assume. Yep, actually, yes, it says in a lengthy interview with Polygon. So there you go. Boom. With Gargoyles now streaming on Disney Plus, there's been a renewed interest, blah, 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 Previous reports claimed Peele pitched a Gargoyles movie to Disney, but now Weisman wants to get in on the action. So, yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Maybe from him, and I know he has also been up here, because he's did that. So this is the similar thing he did with Young Justice, and basically telling folks like, hey, it's out there on streaming, binge it, and maybe the powers that be will see fit to let them do their thing, more on it. And he's doing a similar thing with Gargoyles, and basically telling people, yeah, binge Gargoyles, and tell Disney basically. So, and hopefully, they'll see that and be like, yeah, all right, yeah, go ahead and finish what you got to do, or do something about it, do something with it. So, the power is yours. Not really, but it is kind of, sort of, folks.
Got it.
Next up.
All right, so this is actually kind of fun. So apparently, Disney Plus has several font options when it comes to closed caption subtitles. IO9 editor James Whitbrook discovered this fun fact and tweeted out the gruesome immolation of Anakin Skywalker from Revenge of the Sith with Comic Sans subtitles. They call it casual, but it is basically Comic Sans. So you can read across the bottom, "You are the chosen one. You were supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them." Or, "It's over, Anakin. I have the high ground. You underestimate my power. Don't try it." And, that's, I can't even, now I'm going to sit and watch that as soon as we get off.
So, and actually, this was an article I should have meant to put in here because I did see this also earlier. I believe there was another think piece about Obi-Wan warning Anakin about that. It was like, well, of course he would know how to defend against it because he's been in that situation before, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why he was telling Anakin don't to do it, because because he knows how to defend against it. And sure enough, he did. But yeah. So there's that. But also, if you haven't seen it, there is that particular scene that has been overdubbed with Mickey and Donald's voices as Obi-Wan and Anakin, respectively. So if you see that, check it. By all means, check it out because it's pretty. I was gonna say it's pretty goofy, but it's actually pretty funny.
Oh no!
Goofy is nowhere in it. I still don't get the big deal about Comic Sans, but that's a conversation for a whole nother time and space.
Well,
so I know people hate it to death, or act like they hate it to death, but it's not really that bad. Just calm down.
You mean the death?
No, the Comic Sans.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. I mean, they hate it to death. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've never liked the font. It wasn't. It never genuinely appeared to me like comic book lettering. But what can you do?
True. Okay. Yeah. Now that I can see. That's. I I can see that. That's a good argument right there. But at the same time, but people out here real stupid about it and probably don't even know why. Anyway, next up.
Hello there. General Kenobi.
I know, right?
Oh, now I want to turn that on. Oh my gosh.
All right, keep it together. We got a show to do. We don't have those rights, unfortunately. But yeah, next one's yours. Oh wait, no, next one's mine. Sorry. That's me. Sorry. I'm all over the place tonight. George Lucas's Howard the Duck movie made The Matrix possible. Sit on that for a second, folks. I will say before I even get into this, I legitimately love the Howard the Duck movie. It's not a great movie, but I legitimately love it. So
Holly Robinson's in it.
Huh? Yes.
Holly Robinson.
Yes, she was. Yes, she was. But anyway, when you read the chronicles of the movie industry's legendary flops, they almost always include Howard the Duck, the 1986 Marvel Comics adaptation that cost $37 million and tanked hard at the box office. The iconoclastic Marvel comic was written by Steve Gerber, became an unlikely pop culture phenomenon in the mid-'70s, and George Lucas discovered it in film school. By the 80s, though, Gerber's creation was mostly forgotten, except by Lucas. The director-producer chose Howard the Duck as one of his post-Star Wars marquee production projects, directed by his old friend and American Graffiti co-writer Willard Huyck. Oh, Huyck? Sorry about that. But from the ashes of failure often rise future successes. This oddball flick about a dimension-warped anthropomorphic waterfowl gave rise to a special effect technique that revolutionized the way action cinema was made. We wouldn't have The Matrix without Howard the Duck.
Think on that, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly, and since a lot of effects go through ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, this kind of makes sense. And the Matrix is no shortage of, having used their stuff, if I'm not mistaken. So, or at least it inspired some stuff, even if they didn't use them directly. So yeah, I'm not gonna go through it because it's kind of lengthy, but nevertheless, you have Howard the Duck to thank for The Matrix, folks. Go watch that movie. I don't even know if it's out there. Next up.
All right. In horrifying sounding news, the 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film is celebrating its 30th anniversary.
Oh, I'm dying again!
They're celebrating in the only way they know how. A virtual pizza party that will reunite the original cast. Judith Hoag, who played April O'Neil in the 1990 film, made the official announcement on YouTube. She says, it's our 30th anniversary, and we had some really great stuff planned to celebrate with you guys. And then the pandemic hit. It would be really great to have a virtual pizza party with you guys, our fans, and with us, the original official cast and crew from the 1990 movie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Wow. 30 years.
Oh, I'm dying again!
I wish I had pulled it because I would have pulled the part of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated series where Michelangelo says, "Party!" But I didn't think to do that. So yeah, the party will be held on May 23rd with more information coming in the next few days. So they've been out there on...
That's Sunday.
That is.
No, Saturday.
Saturday
It is May 21st, as of this recording.
Yes. So you got 2 days as of this recording to check that out, folks. And if you didn't get to check it, I would imagine it's probably still going to be out there somewhere. Somebody will probably record it if not. Anyway, moving right along. Power Rangers Dino Fury revealed as the 28th season of the long-running action series. I could have sworn Dino Fury was a title they have used before. That's all I'm going to say, outside of the fact that it's going to be in the adaptation of Ryu Soldier, which is the Japanese version, the Super Sentai version of the show, as it has done, as versions prior to it has been adapted into. But yeah, See, Hasbro has officially announced that it's coming into that it's set to premiere on Nickelodeon in 2021, and it is aforementioned called Power Rangers Dino Fury. And this was apparently revealed that what it is adapting was from February, and that this is the 43rd season of the Super Sentai series. So yes, it is the 43rd series because the 43rd series of Super Sentai, but it's like the 19th or the 28th Power Rangers because Power Rangers didn't get adapted until much later, and Super Sentai has been around since the 70s. But you should go check that stuff out; it's pretty good. It's sometimes better than the American version in some people's eyes. Next up,
Oh, I get this story. Wonderful.
hey, you mentioned it.
I did. I did. So, just the other day on May 20th, Zack Snyder announced the existence and planned release of the fabled, quote, Snyder Cut of 2017's Justice League on HBO Max during a Q&A with fans following a live-streamed commentary on his film Man of Steel. The Snyder Cut consists of Snyder's edit of the film based on the version he was creating before exiting the production due to a tragedy in his family. Snyder, his wife Deborah, and Superman actor Henry Cavill danced around the question before Snyder dropped the bomb. So, we were mentioning this previously. I think we were talking about it off the air. I said this is unfortunately, while I would cautiously state that this is somewhat welcome news because the Justice League movie did in fact fall flat in so many places. It might be interesting to see what Snyder's final vision would have been had he been able to finish production on it. But at the same time, I'm not a fan of the fact that this lends lots of support to people who are not even naysayers. There's just a certain brand of fan on the internet, clamoring for the Snyder Cut, and it definitely tends toward that type of fandom tends towards, I guess, leaning towards the negative far too often. And part of me, really, really just wants to say, it doesn't matter what you think. At the end of the day, I think this is about money. This is about trying to get people to subscribe to HBO Max, even though it's not going to be out until 2021. It's about getting people to subscribe to this somewhat expensive streaming service. What do you think, Roddy?
So I am in agreement with you up to that last point to a part. Like, yeah, for the most part, I agree with you. Yeah, it's like because a lot of this was spurred on. Was like, yeah, they mentioned the mention of the Snyder Cut has been going around for a good year or two, probably got almost 2 years now since the thing happened, and we already know what happened with Snyder. And people kept stoking it up, and Snyder's out there hadn't been helping because he's like, yeah, it's out there, so I don't know what you want me to do, but he's been out there, and other people surrounding him has been out there, so this is definitely a calculated thing. Now, I don't necessarily yes, this is definitely going to may or possibly get people to get not Disney Plus, HBO Max to do this. But as you said, like I said, it's going to be a while. And two, I don't believe it. They did it just for that reason. And I know that's not what you're exactly saying.
Right.
But it's like I do definitely see that. It's like because just like I said before the show, like if people want this thing, make them get why not make them get HBO Max instead of like putting it back out again. Like, and they're granted, Hollywood's no stranger to like putting out movies again on DVD and extra cuts and nothing. But it was like, well, now that they got this, they can kind of capitalize on it and try to get some more eyeballs in the seat. So yeah, definitely this is a not necessarily yes.
They lucked into an incentive. I don't think they purposefully held off on this announcement until HBO Max came closer to reality. I think they saw the success that the Mandalorian had in terms of getting people into Disney Plus and kind of keeping their hooks into into people.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess actually, wait, we're already on top of HBO Max. Is there any original programming that they're using to help launch the service that is?
So we talked about what's coming out, and I think so there are some stuff that they're launching with that was in what we talked about last week. I don't have that article back up, but yes, they are launching with some stuff,
Mhm.
some original content, but most of it's probably going to be like shortly after the launch of it.
Got it.
So they're basically going on like the Crunchyroll stuff and whatever and the Disney the DC universe stuff and whatever else and the HBO stuff that they already got.
Right.
And maybe have a one or two original things hopping around that time, but I don't think there's nothing that stands out.
Right. Nothing with the draw that something like The Mandalorian would have.
Exactly. So,
Under-
I mean, there's enough content on there to be like, hey, I might actually give this a shot because it is almost rivaling Disney Plus in content.
Mhm.
Some would argue more, but I don't know. But regardless, I don't think this cut, whether this cut exists or not, I'm with you about the fan base and the people who think that this is going to be such an ultimate cut, and probably also think that the version that came out was SJWing up the place or whatever the case may be. I don't even know if that was even a factor in about that time, but I can see those people being that way. And I don't think this version is going to be any better.
Mhm.
But this is probably the only other way. If I am still in HBO Max around this time, this is probably the only way you're going to get me to watch it. So there you go. Because I already got a copy of it, the theater cut, and that was I can't say it was against my better judgment, but I did it anyway because I didn't have to. Regardless, that's the thing. Here we are, folks. The fools won, sorta. And I hate that part very much, just like you do. Moving right along. Speaking of HBO, speaking of HBO, you can stream HBO Go and HBO Now with Party app Scener. That's SCENER.
I was about to say it's way too much like John Cena. As soon as you said it.
yeah. If you say, especially if you got a sort of an accent like I do, it's like you can like Cena could have been Cena with a deeper Southern accent. But basically, just like if you know of plugins like Netflix Party or such like this is kind of one or Rabbit that is now long dead. This is kind of one of those where you can basically virtually party up with folks and watch a thing off of HBO and HBO Go, HBO Now and Go. I don't know, and I don't believe it says here whether it's going to work with HBO Max. But I would assume something about that's probably going to be coming out in the next week or so.
Yeah.
Because obviously some of that, because these other two apps and have been out for a minute, so obviously they've had time to kind of hack into it. So, so we'll see though. But knowing HBO is probably the same underlying tech. So if they can get these, they can do these, and whoever's buying this thing can do that. It's not outside the realm of possibilities.
I was about to say before we transition into the comic book news, I wanted to mention, since we've talked so much about HBO, that the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie has dropped on HBO as of this week, and I still have not watched it. And maybe now, in the midst of pandemic, I might sit down and watch it. I know lots of people like it. It's not really my cup of tea, but I may just watch it for academic purposes. I will report back to everybody next week to see if I finally sat down and did it.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, which is weird because I know you and I both know that we talked about this, that HBO had done like, hey, you can watch free stuff for a good while, and I think that may have just passed. And I thought Joker was already amongst that number because I think I've seen an article that said as much, but the article could have been wrong. I didn't know it had just come out on HBO.
Right.
So, and yeah, that if I had HBO at the moment, maybe possibly. And actually, I think no, it didn't because it did revert because I tried to look at some on HBO the other day and it seemed like it wasn't going, and it was one of the things that was supposed to be free. And the last word on that Snyder Cut. Hey, boo! If you heard that, if you
What's
didn't, that was don't worry about it.
Oh, okay.
Anywho, so yes, we are going to transition into these the news. But first, before I do that, I would like to say, hey, there is a do have a clickbait section, and it is full of some stuff. It doesn't have a whole lot as much as what it normally does, but if you get a chance to check that out, it's in the show notes. Check out the best Top Gun video of the week featuring X-wing fighters that some fan made, and I would suspect Danger Zone is probably the crux of this video with X-wings.
I feel the need for speed.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right. So we transitioning now?
We are. And here we are in the comic book news, starting off with Boom gets Mega Man. So Boom Studios, in partnership with Wild Brain Limited and Dentsu Entertainment USA, will launch a new comic book series based on the Mega Man Fully Charged animated series in August. The series will be created by TV series writers AJ Marchicello. There we go. Take me a second there. And Marcus Reinhardt. Artist Stefano Simeon probably. And TV series exec producers and writers of Man of Action, who's been all over the place for X amount of years. The first issue will feature a main cover by Tony Infante and variant cover art by Miguel Mercado. So there you go, a Mega Man book. Yay. Next.
All right. In unfortunately unwelcome news, DC Supergirl ongoing series is still scheduled to conclude with issue number 42 as announced in the publisher's original May 2020 solicitations. But now the series' final 2 issues will publish on digital platforms only as part of the publisher's revised post-distribution shutdown COVID-19 schedule. Supergirl 41 will be on digital platforms exclusively on May 26th and issue number 42 on June 30th. Both issues, however, will be included in the next collected edition, both in physical print and digital. The book is currently written by Jody Hauser. Not a fan of this. Even though I don't read Supergirl, still not a fan.
Yeah, and I feel like this is not the first time we have had this particular article happen. Like I feel like we had a very similar article last year before last, surrounding a Supergirl comic book. So, which I mean, yes, that happens, and this is a different volume from then, but still, actually, this 42 has been going on a couple of years. But regardless, it's like, yeah, it kind of feels like the Supergirl book is like one of the first to slaughter. So, anyway, next up, Nightwing joins Joker War in issue number 71. So Nightwing gets embroiled in the main Batman title's ongoing Joker War crossover, going face-to-face with the Clown Prince of Crime himself in June 9th, Nightwing 71. So I guess Dick is back to being Dick and also Nightwing then, after all that stuff that happened. So, okay, cool. There's a preview here if you are so interested. So, there you go. Next.
Okay, DC is joining with Warner Brothers' Friday launch, that's tomorrow, of the animated feature Scoob, coming out on premium video, on demand, and premium digital ownership by offering 250 issues of Scooby-Doo comic books and trade paperbacks for free. Starting Friday through September 7th, the free comics will be available on DC Universe, Comixology, Kindle, and other digital platforms. All right.
So I assume, no, I guess really not. I was going to say Scooby-Doo Apocalypse is on there, but I guess not. But Scooby-Doo Apocalypse is already on DC Universe anyway, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, if you're interested in some free Scooby-Doo books for you or your kids. You got until you have until September 7th
There you go.
to grab all these from those places mentioned. And it says here which ones, but then there's like the Scooby-Doo Where Are You, Scooby-Doo Shooting Up, and Scooby-Doo stuff. So it's, it's some stuff. Next up, Marvel releases July shipping schedule. Excuse me. We don't envy publishing execs at the large company, comic publishing companies who have to figure out how to schedule comics, since some involved intricate storylines that cross over into other titles. As Diamond Comic distributors, which stop distribution, we already know this, so let's cut to the chase here and say that ICV2 has basically a list of what Marvel is shipping in July. And there are some comics. There are also some collections at the same time. It actually looks, some of this is like stuff that is actually starting to come out now. So they basically have the list up. Looks like they have the list up until, or they just copied the list out. That's from here until July. But you got stuff like Empire #1 is coming out on the 15th. Avengers 34, Giant Size Magneto, Guardians of the Galaxy 4, Spider-Woman 2, which I thought that actually already came out, but okay. And Mortal Hulk 35, some stuff that, so we will probably, between now and then may or may not be talking about some of that stuff, depending on how much comes out at a given time.
Right.
Because all those mentions are still going out at different dates. Or actually, excuse me, I take it back. That's coming out. All that stuff is coming out on July 15th, so that might actually be worth something. But they have different dates in here, and I think those were like the original dates that they were supposed to be coming out. I assume. Because Empire #1 was supposed to come out last month, so there you go. So yeah, that list is out there, and it goes through the end of from July 15th to the 29th, and you can check that out at your leisure. Next up.
All right. A quick disclaimer before I read this next news item. Funko is a sponsor of the Comic Book Chronicles and the Gold Slither Podcast Network. Funko Incorporated unveiled Marvel Battle World Mystery of the Thanos Stones, a micro-collectible tabletop gaming system for broad release after a first-to-market release in Target. This MCU adventure game combines micro-collectible characters and cards where players battle against Thanos. The game is to be sold in Blind Pack Battle Ball, which contains 2 Marvel collectible characters, hero cards, battle cards, and dice. The characters featured in this game line include Iron Man, Captain Marvel, Groot, Valkyrie, Gamora, and Throg. Battle offers kids a completely new way to play and interact with the Marvel brand and universe of characters they know and love, said Paul Gitter, Senior Vice President of Marvel Licensing. The innovative tabletop gaming plus action-packed storytelling gives kids an immersive experience that's fresh for the Marvel brand. All right, let's see what these look like. They don't show them, bastards.
They also announced Marvel HeroClix Secret Wars, which is also based on the Battle War crossover. So, so all
okay.
your HeroClix people got some more stuff to play with.
Hey, man, if I really wanted to, I could I'd get back into it, but not so much right.
Next up, an R2D2 robot vacuum is exactly what chore droid is exactly the chore droid I'm looking for. I would like to point out, if you're watching, before we even go into this, this is not R2. This is like R4 or R9, one of the two, basically one of the red ones if you're watching the video.
Yeah, I'll say the red top, okay.
But it is an astromech, just like R2D2 is. So, I'm just saying the writer of this article, who I believe actually even says the name of it. Yeah, anyway, regardless, it is what it is. So yeah, inspired by a very droid-looking trash can they spotted in a garage. Matthew Scott Hunter basically combined a couple of Roombas and I guess his love of Star Wars into a Mega Roomba in the shape of an astromech. And it says R9D9 with a slick paint job that would make Iron Man tempted to ditch Jarvis, according to this article. There's a video about it if you are so interested in it. That's actually kind of cool. But, you know, not mass marketable. Well, not mass marketed. Next up.
Not yet.
Yeah, really.
Next up, Hasbro has announced Monopoly, Star Wars The Child, tied to the Baby Yoda character, the popular term for the character officially named The Child from the Disney Plus series The Mandalorian.
It's
Players,
Baby Yoda, damn it.
players use cardboard tokens and pawn stands of the Baby Yoda character in different poses, eating a frog, using the Force, drinking a cup of broth, and sitting in the hover pram or eating chicken nuggies and chalky milk to move around the board. Shout out to Binge Mode and the Binge Mode fam, which features Mandalorian-themed places and objects such as a cup of broth, a frog, tracking fob, Razor Crest cockpit, and Razor Crest storage bay. Okay.
Exactly. I'm actually I need to go through all those things. There is a Mandalorian virtual backgrounds. I'm assuming. I think I may have gotten them already. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But yeah, so not outside of realm of the leads. Baby Yoda's fever has been in effect, and now places are going to capitalize it all over the places. Well, more specifically, Disney and and other places. Now, granted, Monopoly that's a kind of a separate thing, but they still have to license it. So, yeah, that's a thing. Next up, Wizard Entertainment cuts Q1 losses on lower sales, and they also buy a gelatin shot maker, which I'm not a business person. Doesn't seem like good business sense if you're cutting losses, but maybe that's just me. Anyway, Wizard Entertainment lost $183,000 in Q1 2020, an improvement from the $223,000 loss in Q1 2019. Sales were down 27% to $2.6 million from $3.5 million in 2019. The company operated 3 shows in Q1 of both years. So if you did not know, Wizard Entertainment is the one over Wizard World and their comic convention stuff, amongst apparently their other dealings, which I'd say like Wu-Tang did in that sketch, diversify your bonds, I guess. Sometimes you gotta. But yeah, apparently this this is just Shot Company is, I don't see the name of it, but it doesn't matter. The company plans to manufacture the pure egg of Jello shots, quote unquote, and sell them along with related consumables to bars, restaurants, and other locations that sell gelatin shots. Probably not the time to do this right now, but all right. Again, way to be somewhat thinking, but hey, boom.
Planning ahead.
I guess.
Planning ahead.
I guess, yeah.
All right. Last but not least, in horror movie news, horror makeup artist Tom Savini, who worked on the original Friday the 13th film, is crafting protective face masks based on the hockey mask that Jason Voorhees wears in the Friday the 13th series. Savini created the masks in conjunction with fellow special effects / makeup artist Jason Baker, who worked on The Dark Knight Rises. Okay.
So you too can roll up behind somebody and potentially get jacked when you say But hey, they look good looking masks. There, it looks like they're hard covered, and I'm assuming there is a layer of fabric behind the mask, along with that. But yeah, you can kind of see it around his face. So yeah, okay, cool, I guess. I know there's some horror fans that probably be doing some mess like that. Anyway, folks, that is the end of the news section for tonight. Before we go into the topic of the night, we have an ad read.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, our first ad read of the night is for Wink, the personalized wine club. Wish I had some wine right now. Wink is world of wine delivered right to your door. From rosé to Cabernet to Torronté, Wink has over 100 styles of wine to discover. Have you ever tried an orange wine? Wink connects you to a world of exclusive wines tailored to your tastes and delivered directly to your door. Wink delivers 4 bottles of wine to you every month with free shipping. You can pick your own bottles or let Wink choose and match to your taste. It doesn't cost a thing to become a member, and you can skip or cancel anytime. And now the listeners of the Comic Book Chronicles can enjoy an exclusive discount of $20 off your first order. To place your first order with $20 off and to help keep our show free for you, go to our network website at cspn.us/wink. That's cspn.us/WINC. Wink Wines through CSPN. Do it today.
Yes, boy, I also wish I had a bottle of wine or something very much stronger because holy hell, the things lately. Anyway, tonight, folks, we're going to get into our topic, and if the hints in the beginning of the news section didn't tip you off, we are going to be reading the Marvel Comics, 1986.
Hey, hold on. Did he say 1986?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm dying again!
1986 mutant comic, Marvel comic event, Mutant Massacre, sometimes also called the Morlock Massacre, but I don't actually remember being called that. So we
It
don't
was.
just, yeah.
I definitely read it. I definitely read it in certain books.
So yeah, here we are reading the Mutant Massacre. So what?
Yeah. I said I did read it in books referring to the events that way.
Right, which makes sense because yeah, the majority of it does definitely take place in the Morlock tunnels, as we were getting into. And as a matter of fact, a little prep work before we get into this. I'm just going to read this off real quick, and then we're going to start with the books in order. So here are some things to know about this event going into it. The X-Men in the previous issue had just finished fighting Nimrod and also the Hellfire Club because Rachel Summers, who was the Phoenix at the time, got it in her mind some kind of way to try to kill the Black Queen, Selene. Wolverine stopped her, but with his claws, and so she's hurt. So that goes into it. Mohawk Storm is in charge. She is powerless. There are some people who died from the Hellfire Club. A couple of people from the Hellfire Club died. Let me see. Let me just read off what I got. Let's see. Like I said, Storm also was the leader of the Morlocks around this time because not only did she's rightfully take the leadership position from Cyclops, fighting his behind when he's got powers and she don't, and whipped him handily. She also whipped up on Callisto and took control of the Morlocks, leadership of the Morlocks prior to this. Like I said, Phoenix has run away from this, so the X-Men are looking for her. The Hellfire Club and the X-Men have a temporary truce after the battle with Nimrod. Nightcrawler gets hurt in the battle and he disappears. He got disappeared after getting hit from Nimrod. Magneto is running the Xavier School at this point, and Professor Xavier is nowhere to be found. I think he's in space around this time.
I believe.
Yeah, I can't remember. Also, the New Mutants are around. They have been founded and were around at this time, so they are also at the school, which includes Colossus' sister Yana, who goes by Magic. We'll get into more of that in a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, talk about the temporary truce. The White King and the Rook died, or whoever that was who died. The original X-Men: Cyclops, Jean Grey, Iceman, Beast, and Angel. And yes, Jean Grey had been resurrected because she was dead prior to this and was resurrected. And XFactor became a thing, and so XFactor to the world.
No, I'm there. Don't worry.
Okay. No, I thought you'd think of it.
Step aside.
Yeah, no problem. Anyway, X Factor's around, and under there are to the world thinks they're mutant investigators, aka mutant hunters, but really they are finding mutants using disguise and taking them back to their base and training them up and try to send them back out to the world where they can kind of pass for normal. But they also have another guys that they use called the Exterminators, which are basically freedom fighters, fighting against XFactor. So they're basically fighting against themselves because they're supposed to be, or as some people call them, evil mutants.
Right. It's all a ruse.
Yes, basically. So, and this was all cooked up. Now, mind you, this is coming in like 9-10 issues into XFactor. So this is the first run of XFactor, not what most people know of later on.
Right.
Let's see. To just to round this out, Morlocks are mutants who live under the streets of New York. The Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and this is kind of a big one at the first part of this, but the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, which is Mystique, Blob, Destiny, Pyro, and Avalanche, and Spider-Woman, who is Julia Coppola, the Spider-Woman, who is not a mutant and came out of Secret Wars, is now going by the name of Freedom Force and working for the U.S. government around this time. And I believe up until we get to a certain point with another character or two that comes into play that is not normally associated with mutants. Actually, I can go ahead and say it. Thor, around this time, has his Sigurd Jarlson identity because he's gotten rid of Donald Blake. And he's like this. I think he was in construction or he was an architect. One of the two, I can't remember.
He was a construction worker.
Okay, so yeah, he was a construction worker, and he was working out of New York also. So he is around, and I think that's for the most part pretty much it going into this. Like I said,
Right.
anything else? Oh, Power Pack was also around, and Franklin Richards was a part of the group, and they had switched powers prior to this.
Right. What I was going to say is just laying out the books that are mainly involved in this series, in this event, crossover event, as well as the aftermath. A lot of these books are run by creative teams that are either literally interrelated or very close to each other in terms of personality or friendship or relationship. Because we're dealing with Chris Claremont, obviously, on the main X-Men book. We're also dealing with friends of the X-Office or at least part of the X-Office in Louise Simonson writing XFactor. We're also dealing with her husband, Walt Simonson, who is at this point not drawing but writing Thor. And and with regards to the New Mutants, obviously they're part of the X office. But Power Pack is also written by Louise Simonson.
Right.
So talk about keeping things in the family. And and just to wrap things up, there is a rando issue of Daredevil that kind of is part of the epilogue of this story. And if I'm not mistaken, Andesenti is also very friendly with this particular group of creators. I could be mistaken.
Right, and we'll definitely mention it, but there's really not much that's like it's kind of sort of involved in it at the end of it.
Right, it's just a very tangential part of the story.
Yes. So in that case, let us start off with. As a matter of fact, real quick, I am going to put up a shot of. Shoot, there we go. That's not it. Transition full. There we go. Here is the reading order of the book, and granted, it might be kind of hard to read, but it will. I will have it as the picture of. It will be the thumbnail in the show notes, so don't worry about it, or on the video. But yes, you can see this was in the back of a bunch of the books at the time, and shows the order, and some of them are kind of concurrent with each other. So basically, X-Men and XFactor are kind of running side by side with each other, with the other books kind of coming in spots.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we will be going to the order that we best can. Starting off with Uncanny X-Men 210, with the probably one of the most iconic covers of the X-Men franchise. One of them.
Oh, absolutely. Well, one of many, but this is definitely one of them. This is by John Romita Jr. and It looks like Bob Wyacek.
Mm-hmm.
And as we mentioned earlier, the creative team, the creative teams on this event series, on this event crossover actually event, is are some of the top-notch teams. This is booked by Chris Claremont, written by Chris Claremont and J.R. Jr., John Romita Jr., and Dan Green on art. Oh, and Ann Nocenti is editing this book, which is, I guess, the relationship that I was referring to with Daredevil. There you go. Look at that. All in the family.
All in the family. And as you can see from the video, I am showing the cover right there. You see all of the X-Men at the time saying, come on, mess with us, make our day. And we get into it thusly. As I pull up my notes. So we start off with a mutant named Richard, who works for the Hellfire Club, and his girlfriend Tommy, who's a Morlock from New York, in a train yard in Los Angeles. And let me take the focus back over here real quick, because you didn't need to see my notes. So Richard tells they get attacked. Richard tells Tommy that they have a chance if they stay together, but she runs. She gets on the train, thinking she's safe. Richard gets killed in the process by people we don't necessarily see at this time. Well, actually, technically, we do end up seeing them later, but whatever.
We get the silhouettes.
Right.
It teased at the beginning of the issue.
Right. Like I said, Richard is teased, then we cut to Dazzler, who is in she's not. I'm saying she's incognito, is what I said, in San Francisco with Lilo Chaney's band. Lilo Chaney is another mutant. I don't know why Dazzler's on the low like this, but the band knows she's a mutant, and they're trying to get her to go powder with her, but she's like, nah. So she gets away from...
Hold that thought. Bear in mind that the Dazzler series had ended prior to this, and remember, she had her own solo series. Right. And I think, and obviously this is something I think it's here on Marvel Unlimited, not plugging the service, but as always, I'm glad I have it. It's my understanding is that one of the points of the series is that Dazzler, aka Alison Blair's status as a mutant, is revealed, and that compromises her status as an up and coming pop singer. So she is here not undercover, as you mentioned, but just definitely in disguise as just a backup or a member of the band of Lila Cheney. Mm-hmm. So, and Lila Cheney is a mutant herself, and she has been involved with characters in the New Mutants and the X-Men.
Yep. Thank you for that. Dazzler goes into her dressing room or whatever and starts talking to herself about, she's as big as Lila Cheney and this and another, but she's tired. But she gets attacked by a figure in the mirror that looks like the disco version of her from the 70s. Turns out it's Malice, which that is another entity that we will probably talk about after a while, but it has no bearing on the Mutant Massacre.
I beg to disagree, simply because it's just another aspect, as we hear sirens in the near distance. Bear in mind that the character Malice, who is the character that is bedeviling Alison Blair at this time, is actually a member of the team that was teased at the beginning of the issue. It's it's a side mission. It's not she's not doing something that's directly tied to the Mutant Massacre that we know as we're about to discover, but it's definitely part of the overall plan.
Right, because you're right, because there was some mention of the hope she's doing, her plan is going by. Yeah, I forgot about that part. But yeah, so there is that. But Dazzler thinks she's fought Malice off, but we see Malice's choker around her neck as she goes to sleep, and she notices around her neck, was like, yes, looks good on her. So we can assume that she had been taken over by Malice at this point. Mm-hmm. So we see cut to Rogue flying through New York, thinking she's in all tattered clothes because of the battle that I mentioned earlier with Nimrod. and the Hellfire Club, and she's like flying around looking for Rachel Summers, who who left the last issue. She saves a couple of people off a skyscraper, and they thank her for it, but some of the crowds around her who are anti-music be like, hey, you're a mutant, get away, blah, 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 this kind of stuff. So there's going to be a lot of that anti-mutant talk during the course of this, so just be we'll bring it up at times. Actually, it's only lots, but
well, I mean, this is a main. I was about to say this is a main story point in a lot of the X-Men books of this era.
Yeah, very much. So yeah, like I said, crowd gathers. There's anti-mutant slander going on. Rogue gets away, goes shopping, but she's found out and harassed by a crowd. And one of the guys that she saved, it kind of comes back and comes to her defense, and she disappears while the other dude and the two dudes are talking. Cool. She flies by a bus with an XFactor ad on it and sees why people are kind of riled up because XFactor being, the world knows the XFactor as mutant hunters, and there's going to be a lot of that in this first couple of issues also. Of people be like, yeah, I'm going to call XFactor this and another, they're basically like the Ghostbusters of this universe except for mutants.
Right.
The way they're received by folks, but also not too liked by some folks. Anyway, next up, we see Yana Rasputin, Colossus's little sister, aka Magic, going to see Colossus at the X Mansion. They exchange pleasantries. They worry about Kitty Pryde. Then they go see Kitty Pryde, and I think this is also stuff that has to do with stuff that has happened in the X books prior to this. So, they go to see Kitty Pryde, who is fixing up Cerebro so that non-psychic mutants can use it. They all talk, and then Cerebro's alarm goes off. We cut to Magneto, who goes to the Hellfire Club, and you will hear about this scene again in the next issue. The next thing we talk about. But before going in, he sees XFactor and recognizes them as the OG X-Men. They also see him, but they don't engage because they're in a crowd of people because they're there looking for someone else, who we'll find out about in a little bit. Magneto mentions how sad it is to see them as mutant hunters. We will definitely get the other side of that point, that part next issue. Like I said, Sebastian Shaw basically Magneto goes in. He talks to Sebastian Shaw, who asked him if he wants to take the White King position, which has recently been emptied because of the fight last issue. And Magneto considers it, basically, because they talk about it. It's like, yeah, we're at a truce right now because of the stuff that happened last issue, but your school and our power, and we can do some things, basically what Sebastian Shaw says. So, Nightcrawler, who's running from a mob of humans, is in a warehouse where Kitty, Peter, and Ileana teleport in and save him. He can't teleport out because he got hurt last issue, like I said. They confront him without showing his powers. Kitty talks to the crowd, like, hey, how dare you, and what if I'm a mutant, and what if we're all mutants then? So we look human, what you going to do about it? So the crowd leaves after they talk to him, and they grab Curtin and teleport away after they ask him why he didn't teleport away, which he says why, because he thinks he's lost his powers. We see Storm and Wolverine talking as they're looking for Rachel in the last place that we see Rachel, if you read the last issue, and that the last place that Wolverine sensed. They don't find her, but they talk about what Wolverine did to Rachel, which is because he stabbed her for trying to attack the Black Queen, like I said, and whether or not he's going to be with the team, and is he going to be with the team or not the team, just like doing stuff on his own. They come to an understanding, and they hold hands, which I'm sure that has been a lot of people's ship, probably because of that one thing right there, because they've always been kind of close anyway. Tommy, the girl,
I was going to say, hold on to that thought very quick. Actually, you know what? This issue's almost over. Then I'm going to
say, I got one more line to say. Yeah. Tommy, the girl mutant that was attacked in L.A., finally makes it to New York, back to the Morlock tunnels, only to be killed by the Marauders, who we see front and center. And that's that for that issue.
All right. Just a couple of notes from me. One, I love how New York City centric this issue is. It actually brought a tear to my eye
Mm-hmm.
seeing the World Trade Center, the twin towers of the World Trade Center, drawn by John Romita Jr. Very early on as Rogue flies past. Um, we also get where the part where they recap where they track down where Wolverine and Storm track down Rachel Summers, aka I forget what they were calling her at this point. Was it Phoenix? Okay,
yeah.
right. At the Delacorte Theater, which is where Shakespeare in the Park is in Central Park.
So that's a real place.
Oh yeah.
Oh, cool.
I've been there for Shakespeare. I saw Patrick Stewart in The Tempest.
Which there's an article about that. He's doing that. They're doing that stuff for free now and putting them out. So that's funny. Anyway.
So yeah, I mean that was pretty. It was very interesting to see lots of cool little New York landmarks being incorporated into this issue. It's been a while. While we have been kind of delving into some evergreen comic book topics, when we're in the DC universe, we never see stuff like this because they're in their own, made up place. So, when you see, the New York that's outside your window, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So
now, to be fair though, they do allude to some places in the DC universe, real places in the DC universe. I don't know how often they actually go there, but they have definitely references some real world places. So, but
of
yeah,
course.
What you said was absolutely right though. All right, so XFactor number 9.
All right, let me flip to this book real quick. XFactor number 9. This is written by Louis Simonson with pencils by a Terry Schumacher. So, it's kind of jarring on the opening splash page to see Uncle Sam all of a sudden being part of the Marvel Universe, but it is actually Mystique in disguise. It is the erstwhile leader of the Freedom Force, the field leader of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. They are in Central Park to arrest Rusty Collins and Skids, his Morlock girlfriend. And
I think they had just met. They didn't. They weren't going together just at the time. They had just met.
What I was going to say is I'm probably putting a lot of history of these characters into taking that from my memory.
We will be, yeah. You won't be the only one. Trust me.
What's that?
I said you won't be the only one because there's
right.
some I would bring up also.
Right, of reading like official handbook entries of in the official handbook of the Marvel Universe. So Freedom Force does its darndest to try to capture Rusty and Skids, and it really doesn't work. Meanwhile, XFactor, aka the Exterminators, aka whatever they're going by in those blue and white uniforms, catches wind of what's going on across the park, and they're trying to get there on foot because they're trying to perpetrate like they're human, or at least just human. While they're in pursuit, this issue crosses over into the events of the Uncanny issue we just discussed, where XFactor runs into Eric Lensher, aka Magneto, walking into the entrance to the Hellfire Club, and they hesitate, thinking that they're in public. They're going to blow their cover as XFactor, so they decide not to engage. But what we discover, I guess, having read the X-Men issue prior to this, what we know is that Magneto knows who he's looking at. He knows what's up. He recognizes all these characters. So he has he's trying to figure out why they would try to change the nature of their interactions with the world by saying that they're actually mutant hunters as opposed to mutants, and proud of it. Meanwhile, we flip back to Rusty and Skids getting caught up in the psionic web of Julia Carpenter, aka the Spider-Woman, who nobody knows.
Hey,
She's
that's not fair.
she's literally the Spider-Woman character I did not want to buy as a Marvel Legend. So
Look, she was a part of the whack. Well, she was paddling around with her because I can't remember. She was a Wackos. She was in Force Works. Look, people know her. And she was also at this time kind of coming off of so she can, just like I said earlier, she was also coming off of Super Secret Wars where she got her powers. So she's fairly new, and I think she had been the reason why she's with Freedom Force was because she had done something, she had done a crime, and to atone for it, she's working for the government.
I'm obviously speaking tongue in cheek, but sort of.
I know, yeah. Well, I mean,
like,
you're right. Well, I mean, you are kind of right because, like I said, most Spider-Woman, people would know at this point. One probably would be Spider-Gwen,
right,
and then Jessica Drew, who was the original. So,
right,
and
what I,
some
when,
probably knows Aranya, but who's.
So, just as a quick aside, at this point in Marvel history, we had already had Secret Wars 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, because the X-Men issues of the Secret Wars 2 crossover happened maybe a few issues prior to the beginning of this event. So, like maybe half a year's worth. So, it's really not that far in real time. Getting back to the story at hand, Rusty and Skids are just about to get pinched by the Fuzz, aka Freedom Force, when the crowd decides to interject. Well, at least maybe not the crowd, but a police officer decides to fire upon Freedom Force, and that gets the attention of XFactor, aka the Exterminators, aka the original X-Men. They descend upon what is essentially degenerating into a riot scene where a crowd is literally throwing eggs. Man, you gotta love 1980s New York. They're throwing eggs at Freedom Force, at the Blob, eggs at the fat guy. Oy, oy, oy. So so XFactor intervenes on Freedom Force's behalf. They claim to have put up a technological force field when in fact Jean Grey is putting up a telekinetic field to try to shield Freedom Force from the awful egg throwing New York crowd. We flash
This is
back.
also sorry, hold on for a second. This is also against their better judgment because they don't really want to do it, but at the same time, they are still mutants and they still are trying to protect them and also see what's going on. Anyway,
right. So meanwhile, as they're able to get the crowd to disperse, Rusty and Skids descend into the Morlock tunnels for alleged safety, because that is where Skids is from. We get a hint of, actually I don't know how often she's come up prior to this, but we get more of backstory with a character named Trish Tilby, who is a reporter that is following XFactor's exploits.
I can explain that real quick. She gets introduced a couple of issues prior to this in XFactor.
There you go. Well, I know that she becomes involved with the Beast later on.
She definitely does, and they get into it. This is like their first meeting and getting into it because they're kind of sparring off against each other at this point. So yeah, this is before their relationship starts.
Right. Meanwhile, we are brought back to the XFactor complex where Artie Maddox is seeing visions of what is happening underneath the city, underneath the streets of New York City, in the Morlock tunnels and in the sewer system, and he is trying to get help. He's trying to go to Cameron Hodge, but we know who Cameron Hodge is, especially if you read the Extermination.
Exactly.
Extermination Agenda. Come on, you know who Cameron Hodge is, so you know he is up to no good. He is the director of public relations for X Factor, and he is a friend of Warren Worthington III, aka the Angel. And bad things are afoot when Cameron Hodge is around.
Friends in quote.
Yes. Artie decides to literally trace a drawing of his visions onto a wall so that he can leave a message, as he is mute, by the way. Artie is, in fact, mute. He leaves a visual message for the members of X Factor to leave them a clue as to where he is going. And we get the first meeting of the two buddies who are not buddies at this time. I believe this is their first meeting. What I'm referring to is the meeting of Artie and Leech in the Morlock tunnels. Leech is a mutant who basically cancels out any super abilities when he is within a certain range of them. So the X Factor team decides to track down Artie because they're following the visions that he and the drawings that he left behind. Artie and Leech are in the Morlock tunnels, and Leech takes Artie to meet another mutant who will have more parts, larger parts to play later on. I'm speaking of Caliban, another Morlock who, if you did not know, is actually a mutant with the mutant power of detecting other mutants, much like a mobile Cerebro unit.
Yeah, and this is pre Horsemen of the Apocalypse, which some of that will come into play in this also.
Exactly. In the tunnels where Rusty and Skids are trying to hide out, Freedom Force catches up to them. And the Blob is laying the smackdown on Rusty for making him crawl through the sewers. It doesn't matter. And he's about to kill him when Cyclops intervenes with an optic blast, and the rest of X Factor form up, and a battle ensues between Freedom Force and X Factor in the Morlock tunnels. Lots of fisticuffs ensue. Destiny calls it all off because she is a precognitive, and she sees nothing but death if they decide to remain in the Morlock tunnels. So Mystique, her lover, calls a hasty retreat for Freedom Force. They withdraw when Avalanche basically brings the roof down. That's his move. When Avalanche brings the roof down onto X Factor, and they are forced to split up. Jean and Angel take Rusty and Skids back to the surface to the X Factor compound, while Beast, Cyclops, and Iceman make their way further into the Morlock tunnels. Finally, we end the issue in a conference room in the Pentagon, where Valerie Cooper, who runs a special part of the defense agency that's known as Freedom Force, and she's basically dressing down Mystique and the rest of Freedom Force for letting Rusty and Skids get away. We end this issue with Mystique using the goodness, this is so salient and so relevant in the age of the grifter president. We have Mystique using the power of the federal government to bring down Warren Worthington and X Factor because they have the wherewithal to do so.
Yep. Also worth noting, Valerie Cooper, one-time liaison to the Avengers, I believe, after Garrick, something like that. But I know she's definitely, anytime you've seen some superheroes affairs of the government, you would either see Garrick or Val Cooper at this time. So yeah.
I was about to say specifically X-related, though.
Yes.
Specifically mutant-related, you would see Valerie Cooper.
Yes. Well, she has been around Avengers, but yes, you are absolutely right.
All right, next up.
Next up, we go to Uncanny X-Men number 211, and I have always loved this cover. Let me switch back over to it, or these covers specifically, because this was a part of Marvel's 25th anniversary, and I kind of wish I had bigger versions of these, but I didn't think about it earlier, but here you go.
If you give me time, I go downstairs, get my copy out of the drawer box.
Well, I'm showing it, but it's not. It's like it's not a big version. It's the Marvel Unlimited version. So, and it doesn't blow out. Anyway, so yeah, you see Wolverine here, kind of battle worn Wolverine, and you see the border with all the major Marvel characters around it, because again, 25th anniversary of Marvel at this time. 1986, folks. All of the books of this month have a similar color cover, so this won't be the first time you see a cover like this during this event. Anyway, going into the thing, here we go. We get a 4-minute introductions into the Marauders, who go on the killing spree in the Morlock tunnels. Some Morlocks try to defend themselves, but to varying degrees of work. So specifically, Piper calls out a bunch of alligators for some odd reason. Some to maybe go after the Marauders, and some to warn folks. I'm not even sure, but we actually the alligators kind of come into play sort of elsewhere, as you will see. Cut to Xavier School.
Hold on to that thought. The pages that you were referring to are probably probably some of the most massacreiest pages in this event.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of them. Yeah, like they just go
falling left and right in these several pages.
Although, if I'm not mistaken, I think it is the next book or XFactor where you just see just all out wanted. Like you see a lot of killings here, but it's just like a bunch of them. Just like they just start out like here. Yeah, they definitely start out just killing a bunch of folks, but that's just gonna be a running theme in the next couple of issues until things start turning around. So yeah. But anywho, we cut to Xavier School where the New Mutants and X-Men are going about their day. Wolverine gets upset that Colossus and Rogue wants him to rest because, there was a lot of fighting that he got hurt in. Even though he's got a healing factor, he still, still can get hurt enough to be ineffective. So he gets mad off that and walks off.
I was about to say, I thought this was kind of a dangling plot line that was picked up here and there by Claremont and all the other Wolverine writers, where at this stage in the history of the Marvel Universe, Wolverine was not wearing down, but definitely, they were trying to create some weaknesses for him, and one of them was that his healing factor wasn't able to keep up with the injuries that he was sustaining.
Yes. Kitty Pryde grabs some snacks in her little nightie. Don't ask me why I brought that up, because well, kind of actually I bring this up because Magneto's kind of just standing there at the door watching her get snacks out of the refrigerator. I'm feeling like, is he really creeping? And also comic books at the time kind of like, all right, get a little water. But whatever, but she's a teenage kid, so stop it. Anyway, Kitty, she grabs some snacks only to be interrupted by Magneto, who kind of like, hey, like you shouldn't be raiding the fridge like that. And she was like, hey, I got a term paper coming up, so I need snacks. This is still school after all. So Magneto's like, all right, cool, do your thing, just don't let it be a big thing. So she uses her power, goes upstairs to her room where Ilana is waiting for some snacks because she was hungry because she was studying. Nightcrawler teleports to Wolverine, but he's still hurt, so he's actually finally able to teleport again, but he's still hurt. So the act kind of does him some more harm than good. He plops in Wolverine's arms, and they both are like, yeah. Nightcrawler's like, yeah, we're not really good for anybody right now, huh? It's like, yeah. So they go off and drink beer. But before they could do that, a Morlock comes from underground and asks for the X-Men's help, and then dies. They basically say, mentions the Marauders and that the Morlocks are dying, and then it dies, or he dies, or she dies. I'm not sure what it is. So it's a big mole-looking creature. So I don't know. I'm not sure. Either way, Psylocke pre-body swap, because this is also before Psylocke got her body swap on, and so
this is early Psylocke.
Mm-hmm. This is
post eye Psylocke, but it's still like you said, pre body swap, pre Quanon,
Mm-hmm.
Acts of Vengeance.
Yes.
This is even pre pink and purple armor. This is really early Psylocke.
This is before. And that's right, because it was, matter of fact, it was before. I think it was like after here or something where she gets. It was one of these other events where she gets that armor.
Right. Well, what I was going to say is she's actually, just as a footnote, and you'll continue. She's actually not a member of the X-Men at this point.
Correct. I was going to mention that actually. So yes, thank you. Yeah, she's with the X-Men, and she's kind of, I think it's just when she was kind of like Counselor Troy in a way, but she's also apparently has had some medical training or something going on, because she kind of helps with the sick in various ways.
I think she was also a part of some things that were happening in the New Mutants, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So, but I wasn't reading New Mutants at the time, but I believe that's where she had appeared previously.
That sounds about right. Yeah, because she was kind of like mentoring them or something around that time, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I was kind of off and on that book because of stuff like this. So to continue, Psylocke tells basically what she saw in that Morlock's dying memories, and talks about the Marauders killing folks. And Storm makes the executive decision to go and help the Morlocks down in the tunnels, because after all, those are her people too, because she's the leader of the Morlocks. She also tells Magneto that he should stay behind because he's the head master of the school, and if anything happens to them down there, might need to, someone has to defend the school, along with the New Mutants, So the team gets teleported to the tunnels by magic. They see Callisto and others in the, I believe they call it the alley, and others are hurt, and they try to do what they can to help them, but they get attacked by the Marauders. And it just so happened that some of the X-Men here, like probably about 4 or 5 of them, had fought one of the Marauders, Vertigo, before, so they knew how to fight her. So that kind of helped. But they made good, they made sure to mention that to folks. Because they used to do that a lot back this time. You see little footnotes down at the bottom of a panel or whatever. Anyway, Nightcrawler takes out Vertigo, but gets hurt by Riptide because he tries to teleport, and he takes out, and in doing so, kind of hurts himself a little bit more. So he gets hurt by Riptide, who is basically like Whirlwind, and he's got like shurikens that he either has on him and can throw out like really fast, and he spins in a circle like Tasmanian Devil.
Right, that's basically his shtick.
Yes. So he gets hurt from that, but he's not dead. Storm tells Magic to teleport. Tells Magic to teleport the wounded back to the mansion and do not come back with the New Mutants, because she was like, "Do you want me to bring reinforcements?" And Storm's like, "Nope, don't you do it." Storm then does what you never do in most cases, according to D&D rules. She splits the parties up. She splits the team up to try to save more Morlocks and to deal with the Marauders. Because as we will find out, that doesn't always go well, especially where XFactor is concerned in this case. Scalp Hunter, one of the, I guess he's the leader of the field leader of the Marauders, guns down a whole bunch of other folks, including Anna Lee, who was like I don't know what the part was, but she was kind of like a nanny. And there were some kids around with her she was trying to protect, but he killed them all. That will come back into play in a little bit. Colossus and Kitty hears the shots and takes on him and Arclight, who just so happens to show up, who's another Marauder. But Arclight gets the better of Colossus and buries him under a bunch of rubble. Scalpulture tries to shoot Kitty, but it doesn't work because she phased, because that's her power. Kitty goes to talk kind of tough, but then she's like, I need to go save Colossus. And while she's leaving, she was like, yeah, I couldn't actually kill her, but I had to talk tough and channel Wolverine, because, that's what you do. Because she even said she could have easily killed him, but she's got to go look into her teammate first, which was a kind of a cop out, because she definitely could have ended part of this whole thing by taking some action. But this is what happens. And also probably comic code, but whatever.
Okay, and this is also pre-Kitty Pryde and Wolverine limited series.
Correct. So she goes to see about Colossus, and that's that. Storm, Wolverine, and Rogue find some more Morlocks, and tries to lead them out of the tunnels, but get met with Cyclops's, or almost get met with one of Cyclops's optic blasts, which just happened to be coming down a tunnel. And they're like, wait, that's an optic blast. Why are they here? And Wolverine's like, yeah, it's all of them. It's the original X-Men. So let's go see why they're down here. But they can't do that because the tunnel gets collapsed from the way that the optic blast came from, so they couldn't do that. They also get attacked by the Marauders at this time. So, yeah. Wolverine and Harpoon kind of hurt each other. Storm and Callisto take down Scrambler, whose Scrambler is kind of like Rogue. He can take people's powers. Actually, he's more like Leech, actually. He touches you and he takes your powers away. So...
Well, I know it's whatchamacallit. He touches you and you lose control of your powers, really.
Oh, I thought it was lose power because there were people that just straight up lost their powers when he touched them.
I think that's what his whatchamacallit. I think that's what he normally does. But sometimes whatchamacallit, if I'm not mistaken, Scrambler, if he touches you, can cause you to lose control of your powers too. If I'm not I could be mistaken.
No, you're probably right. Because with a name like Scrambler, that sounds more right than not. But he and Rogue touch each other and they cancel each other out. So, and they're kind of dazed for a second, which Harpoon kind of takes advantage of and tries to kill Rogue with one of his spears. But Kitty gets in the way and phases her out. Phases her out. Excuse me. But still manages to get hit with the harpoon. And I should point out, this is an energy harpoon that Harpoon actually uses. An energy spear that Harpoon uses, so you can make some distinction there. And it disrupts her powers, making it like she can't unphase, or that she can't unphase anymore. But we don't find this out until a little bit, but we'll get to that. Colossus breaks Riptide's neck in dramatic fashion. So like, Harpoon, make peace with what little god what gods you got, because you're next. But Harpoon's already gone by this time. Which right. I remember reading this and I was like, dang, Colossus is usually gentle. So and again, this is not the first time this is actually one of the first time probably we see Colossus kind of in this state, or one of the first times, now that I think about it, but it's probably some other times. But he's normally gentle, pretty gentle. Right.
What's funny about this, and it's really one of the obviously I'd have to do more reading to confirm this, but as far as I can recall, this is one of the first times you actually see kind of regular weaponry piercing Colossus's organic steel armor. Granted, it's weaponry that's being hurled by Riptide at amazing speed, so it's being delivered with, tons of force to be able to penetrate, but it's not something you see all the time. So he's literally wounded in several places, and this becomes a point later on in the story. But when we see the panel that portrays Colossus just prior to literally breaking Riptide's neck, he is gravely wounded. We just don't see the blood because he doesn't have any when he's in organic steel form. So he is gravely wounded, but as you said, it's a pretty badass scene where he does the deed and threatens the life of the Eskimo with the spears for impaling him with said spears just previously.
Yeah, and
are very good at hitting and running in this story.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that ends up happening.
There's a lot of hit and run tactics.
So, yes. Where are we? Oh yeah. So we find out that Kitty is stuck in phase state. Rogue wants revenge. But Storm's like, no, we got to get these people back to the mansion because these people are hurt. So we don't have time for that. But she does go and tell Wolverine to go and find the prisoner to interrogate, so we can find out what's really going on around here. But the rest of the Marauders is his, so kill him. Do whatever you want, dude. And then that's where we end this book, this issue.
Yeah, more. Just lots and lots of, the body count is racking up in this issue.
And now we move to X Factor number 10.
X Factor number 10. This is a Walt Simonson cover of Cyclops on the 25th anniversary background. We find ourselves. Oh, this is an issue written by Louise Simonson, and art on this book is by her husband, Walter Simonson. We find ourselves at the beginning of this issue back in another part of the Morlock tunnels, where the Marauders are still, kind of on the rampage. X-Factor is still, at this point, splitting up, with Angel and Jean Grey withdrawing with the wounded Rusty and Skids heading back to the X-Factor compound, while Cyclops, Beast, and Iceman are diving deeper into the Morlock tunnels, where they come upon yet more massacring of the Morlocks being done in the alley. Arclight and Harpoon are the main marauders in this latest skirmish between hero and villain. Like I said, lots of hitting and running. Arclight is another one like Avalanche, who's good at bringing the roof down so that they can cover their escape. Jean Grey and Angel finally make it up to the X-Factor building, and some more confusion about their actual status as mutant hunters or mutant saviors or mutant helpers or mutant sympathizers. Some confusion arises when Cameron Hodge comes on FaceTime and and Skip, like, wait a second, he's the PR guy for X Factor. I've seen him on TV. Who are you guys? You're a bunch of liars. This is an ongoing aspect of the story in this particular crossover, as we mentioned earlier. Meanwhile, we flip to the first appearance of a particularly dangerous member of the Marauders, who heretofore had not yet really been seen. I guess he had been skulking in the shadows. Caliban, Artie, and Leech have the unfortunate luck of running into one Victor Creed, a.k.a. Sabretooth. Artie and Leech, crawl away into, or try to crawl away into tubes in the sewer, and get deep in, just deep enough in where they don't see who, in fact, saves them, at least temporarily, from Sabretooth, that being Cyclops, Beast, and Iceman. Cyclops, being unfamiliar with Sabretooth, does not finish him off, and Sabretooth's healing factor kicks in and helps him to recover quickly, and he's back on the prowl, going after Artie, Leech, and Caliban. Meanwhile, in the Pentagon headquarters of Freedom Force, Mystique has been successful in using the misapplied powers of the United States government, and has leaked the expose to Trish Tilby about the true nature of Warren Worthington, of his status as a mutant, and of his backing of X Factor. The news travels quickly, even pre-internet, and it reaches the boardroom of the Worthington building, where Candy Southern, who's running a meeting of the board, I guess, of Worthington Industries, gets wind of this and has to postpone the meeting. Candy Southern is at this time and was established previously as a love interest for Warren Worthington, aka the Angel. We also have in the infirmary, as Rusty is being looked at by a doctor that had been called in. Warren actually catches part of the news telecast where he's been outed by Trish Tilby. We flash to what's happening in the Morlock tunnels. Another character who heretofore we had not seen as a member of the Marauders, that being Blockbuster, who is, much like his name, a powerhouse, basically a big bruiser type, and he is engaging with some of the more combative Morlocks. What did they call them?
What's that?
The Morlocks that were that were more combat ready. There's a name for them.
You know what? And I don't remember.
It comes up later. We'll see it later.
Yeah.
What's funny is that we'll see it later. But in any event, some of these Morlocks decide to put up a better fight than others, and Iceman and Beast and Cyclops are trying to give them aid, and they take on Vertigo and Blockbuster. Again, more hit and run tactics. As soon as the odds don't favor the Marauders, they swiftly retreat, leaving the heroes to lick their wounds and pick up their wounded. Artie and Leech, meanwhile, are still trying to fend for themselves in the tunnels. We flash to the XFactor infirmary, where Angel and Jean are discussing the recent events of his essential unmasking and the reveal that of the big secrets behind the mission and the existence of XFactor. Unfortunately, this leads to not a kiss, but definitely a moment between friends that is misinterpreted by one Candy Southern, who thinks that Jean Grey's superpower is wrecking enough relationships and wrecking lives. So, actually, no, that her real power is to make men fall in love with her and then destroy them. Gotta love it.
Kind of not wrong. And if you take it in a certain way, like it ain't her fault, but
right. It tends to be a story that follows her around, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gotta love it. So Jean is heading back to the tunnels, and Angel decides to follow her. We flash to an interesting interlude in the story. Very interesting, where Harpoon and Sabretooth are taking on a member of the Morlocks, an old woman who is, at this point,
her name is Plague, and not.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. She does have a code name I can remember. Thank you.
And this is also before. Well, you're about to get into it. Never mind. Go ahead.
Right. I was about to say it's a one-page interlude. So this character's name is Plague, and one Ensabanur, aka Apocalypse, decides to butt in and takes out Harpoon, while Plague had put the whammy on Sabretooth, at least temporarily, because of the nature of her power, making Sabretooth feel like he's sick. Lucky for him, he's got a healing factor. Apocalypse takes out Harpoon while Sabretooth is down and out, and takes Plague away, and essentially christens her Pestilence, first horseman of Apocalypse. And we will see this character return in later issues of XFactor.
Yep.
I love Louise Simonson's scripting on this. The caption reads, "Ages later, Jean Grey and the Angel have made their way back down into the Morlock tunnels, and they catch up with what is, and they hear things happening, and the sound leads them towards the battles. More marauders appear out of the woodwork. We have Arclight being joined by Scrambler and what is this dude's name? Prism. Prism doesn't last long.
No, he looks like Martinex from the OG Guardians of the Galaxy, but not really.
Right. Prism is introduced literally on one page. He reflects. He does something actually pretty neat, which is reflecting the full force and probably magnified of the optic blast fired by Cyclops Atom back at Cyclops. And Jean, in a fit of murderous rage, picks up Prism and smashes him against the wall. We had seen Prism for the grand total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he's smashed into pieces in the 6th panel that we see him in. Gotta love it. Arclight makes a run for it with the disabled Scrambler over her shoulder. Like I said, lots of hit and run stuff. As soon as they have the chance to withdraw, the Marauders do it. They don't wait at all, and they'll bring the roof down behind them to cover their escape. Now we've got lots more wounded for the XFactor team to deal with. Cyclops is down and out. The Beast at one point had become wounded when he was fighting Harpoon, and it has progressively gotten worse. So now Iceman puts up an ice wall to cover their retreat as Jean Grey and Iceman take Cyclops and Beast towards the surface and the XFactor compound. Meanwhile, Angel is making his way into the tunnels. And you know what? Just as a quick, I was about to say, as a quick note before we get to this pretty important part of the story, I wanted to note that it was refreshing to see how densely packed some of these stories were. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of reading on these pages.
Yeah.
There's lots of dialogue, and there's lots of panels, and it's not something we're used to seeing nowadays.
That's just true. Yeah, there was definitely a lot more panel work and exposition going on in books at the time. Like we had already said this on Crisis, but yeah, that was definitely a lot. Now, granted, Marvel and DC kind of split how they did it, as you can see here. And granted, this is also 2 different times from Crisis to this.
Right.
Actually, wait, 86. No, so it wasn't that. So actually, it was around.
Right. It's soon after. It's not that after. It's soon after.
But regardless. Yeah, but the way basically is what I'm just getting to, which I guess it still applies, is that the way they handled all the text or the amount of text they put on the page is kind of differing between Marvel and DC, but still a lot between both.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, people are a lot more verbose.
Yes.
Back. So even if they're trying to say some of the simplest things, lots of things are said in declaration mode. Yeah. Lots of declarations of ill intent and lots of other things going on. Angel runs into Leech, but they also themselves run into more Marauders, namely Vertigo, Harpoon, and Blockbuster, and things go very badly for Warren Worthington III.
Wait, Artie, not Leech.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Did I say Leech?
Yeah.
I meant Artie.
Yeah, because I think you might have said it, but yeah, Artie had broke away from Leech and to go get help, and he picked up the scent of the XFactor, and yeah.
Ah, gotcha. No, I probably glossed right over it. But unfortunately, getting back to the travails of Warren Worthington III, he's outnumbered and outmatched, especially in the tight confines of the section of the alley that they find themselves in. And Harpoon and Blockbuster overpower him. Even though he's able to take out Vertigo, the other 2 overpower him. And in some really, really, even though it's not depicted graphically, you just know what's happening. the Angel is being impaled into the walls by harpoons of high power energy, and his wings are being impaled. He's being hung up to dry, and being readied for a kill shot as the cliffhanger, not page, the cliffhanger panel leaves us. All of this happening in the span of a few panels, and it is some epic stuff. Shout out to Walt Simonson for, like cramming all this stuff into 2 pages.
Right. Yeah. Meanwhile, Angel's having an inner turn while he's getting impaled and his wings getting crumpled up. He's having an inner monologue with himself about the things that happen in the book about between him and Angel, and him and Jean and Candy, and oh, woe is me. I've done some things, and this was a bad idea doing XFactor, because a lot of that kind of came out in the course of this issue, and it's like, and then he gets to the realization, oh wait, Artie can't talk. But he sent them for help. Like, yeah, Artie can't talk in like the way we're talking right now, but he can convey images or whatnot. But he can't like verbally talk. So he just finally realized as he blacks out, oh wait, that was a bad idea to send him off to get help when he can't actually talk.
Right. Well, this is all very, very unfortunate timing for the Angel. And as I said, he's left impaled on the wall, and bad things are set to happen. And move into the next issue.
New Mutants 46, which granted is kind of like a side issue to a point, but it's also in between the this one and the next one, because some things happen on the side, but it's still kind of involved. But anyway, New Mutants number 46. Here's my notes, and let me pull that back on the screen and go. The New Mutants are awoken from their slumber by Lockheed's roar, and they go to investigate. Danny sees death. By the way, Danny Moonstar, who is basically the field leader of the New Mutants, I think, along with Cannonball, if I'm not mistaken. She is a mutant that can see visions from other, can basically make holograms appear, but she's also a Valkyrie. She recently got that power as of, I don't know how often before this issue happened. So with her Valkyrie powers, she sees death all across the not across, but on the school, on top of the school, but she's not sure where it's coming from. Just death right there, like, hey, how you doing? Anyway, Magic goes to get Mariah McTaggart, who's taking a shower.
Hold that thought. If you thought that whole trope that was going on in the Jane Foster Valkyrie thing was new, it's not.
Right, exactly.
About seeing the image of death amongst the living, hovering amongst the living. It's apparently been going on for a while.
Oh yeah. Like I said, right prior to this, she got hurt. She became a Valkyrie, and I want to say there's definitely an event that outside of the last War of the Realms and Fearless Defenders book addresses some of that.
Yeah, I wonder if they ever depicted Brunhilde as having this ability, graphically, you know what I mean? Like having the image of death.
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Kind of interesting. That's why I said I was struck when I saw this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, so they have, used this interpretation before of the Valkyrie's powers. So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time they did it.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, but I'm sure somebody will write that article at some point when they see this, because we got fans out there. I'm just kidding.
That's right.
Let me stop. But getting back to the book, though. So yeah, Magic goes to get Moira McTaggart from Ireland, and Myra is taking a shower. So Magic is like, hey, yeah, we got to go because things have happened at the mansion. Didn't wait for her to put some clothes on and thing, but also at the same time, she and Banshee are lovers, which I think they had already had for a while. But regardless, and he sleeps, so he don't know none of this. But Magic left a note for him about that reason. So they teleport away, but they're stuck in limbo for a minute or for a minute or two, because apparently Magic cannot control I don't know. There's some aspect of her power, and I'm not too full of it. She can teleport, and she uses limbo to teleport through, but she also goes through time and space at the same time, or potentially can. And she kind of can't control that fully at this point. But she ends up getting to limbo, and they're sitting there talking, and she tells Myra McTaggart what's going on with the mansion. And as soon as time catches back up, they teleport back into the back to the mansion. She also, before they do that, makes Myra some clothes because she's also magic. If the name didn't tell you anything. So let's see. We see the X-Men coming back from the Morlock tunnels, which is where this takes place, with the wounded, and everybody sets up a hospital and temporary housing for them all. The New Mutants try to help out. Some of them make some mistakes, and the X-Men have to kind of the X-Men and Psylocke at this point have to kind of help, with something that happened. So some of them are feeling kind of useless because of the fact, like they're tired in some aspect of the hour they couldn't do what they needed to do at the time. One particularly, Sunspot, aka Roberta DaCosta, as we will see in a second. Danny Moonstar still sees death around people, specific people in general, and she's kind of freaked out. Roberto, aka Sunspot, goes into the kitchen to try to get him a snack. Runs across Rain, Rain, Wolfbane, who is making sandwiches for the wounded folks, and he tries to take one, and
I forgot that we learned how to finally pronounce that.
Yes, we did.
My apologies for.
Yes, so yeah, and Rain's in there making sandwiches for the wounded, and
I'm glad that you remembered because I don't think I remembered, and I would have said Ronnie, and I would have been like, "What the hell are you talking?" Oh,
mm-hmm. I will still, as you can see, I will still say it, and I did that intentionally, but I will still just go through both of them just because I'm stupid like that. But
I would have done it too. I would have forgotten. Go on. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. So Rain taps his hand with the wooden spoon, talking about, no, these are for the wounded. So he gets pissed off and flips the table, literally. And because he's mad at people, chastising him. All because Magneto did just a minute ago. Or a minute prior to this. So that starts a fight. She goes into Wolfbane mode. Danny feels this because she has a link with Rain, a psychic link with Rain when she's in this mode. So she and Cannonball Sam Guthrie run in and stop the fight. Doug notices, but meanwhile Doug kind of notices Warlock on the front stoop, looking around with sensors and just kind of being freaked out, but not saying why. And he just kind of ponders under this. Shan calls her family, who is also called Karma. Shan is called Karma in this. She's a new mutant. She calls her family and is worried about them. And Magic walks in, and is like, well, you're so worried, let's go get them. And they teleport out to go get her family. Doug, aka Cypher, whose only power is being able to talk to anybody because he's basically Duolingo. He's basically the Rosetta Stone of mutants.
Right. He's a universal translator.
Exactly. So, oh man, follow the mutants. Anyway, so Doug tells the rest of them, he's also kind of one of the youngest, so he's a little wishy-washy on a lot of stuff. Anyway, Doug tells the rest of the New Mutants about Shan and Magic because he happened to be there, when they were teleporting, and they told him. So he goes around and tells everybody else. Go cut back to Shan's apartment where she and Magic doesn't find her family, and it's dark. Shan turns on a light, and then there's an explosion, and we cut away from that. The rest of the New Mutants to try to call at some point, I guess this is a little bit later, try to call Shan's apartment, but don't get no answer. They decided to go find them because it's been a while, as they say. But so they head out through the Morlock tunnels, like they cut a path through the Morlock tunnels, so that they would not be seen by the X-Men, and they don't tell the X-Men that they're doing this because the X-Men told them to stay put. Warlock turns into a car and says he's been scanning wild data. He's still kind of freaked out, and Doug and Danny talk about this for a second, so they're kind of worried about that. And there was something that comes into play, and then a little bit also kind of comes up. It's because I think there was an issue of like, why can't they fly or something?
Mm-hmm.
But that comes up later. Anyway, let's see. They come back above ground near Shan's apartment after traveling the tunnels and curses out the Marauders because I guess they don't necessarily show it, but they must have seen a lot of the deaths that are going on in the Morlock tunnels because of the Marauders.
Right. It's a unintended byproduct of Warlock forcing them to ride in the Warlock mobile through the tunnels. They actually run into all the bodies.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, they couldn't go fly anyway because they probably would have been seen on the grounds anyway, leaving the campus. So, no, one way or the other.
Well, I think what was intended is that once they got beyond where the X-Men Sentry Post is in the tunnel,
right,
Chester to the New York City tunnels, they would, get there as fast as possible.
Sure.
Because of Warlock, and we'll get to it, in a little while, why he's acting the way he is, acting strangely, because of his insistence that they go by vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
They run into the aftermath of the Marauders attacking, killing all the Morlocks.
Yep. So to round this out, they see Shan's apartment and it's in flames because of the blast from earlier, but they don't find Shan. They don't find Shan and Yana, who just so happens to be around the corner nursing their wounds, and they come up on them. But they say, hey, we weren't in there, but we did get hurt teleporting on the way out. And Shan kind of got the worst of the two of them. They think that the Marauders did it, and they go set out to find Shan's siblings, her brother and sister. Warlock freaks out and just grabs everybody and heads back into the tunnel. Like, he just freaks the heck on out. Goes back into the tunnels and just runs as fast as he can. But he runs into the Magus, who happens to be his dad. And yes, this is a bigger, stockier version of Warlock, if you know what Warlock looks like.
This is not the other side. This is not the evil Adam Warlock.
Exactly. Yeah, that's different. Different company.
So it's so wild though that they're related to similarly named characters, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's always funny when Marvel and DC kind of did stuff like that. But last to Duranda South, so yeah, they get ambushed by the Magus, who's like, ha ha ha, I got you now. And he goes to try to infect them with what's called the transmode virus here, but I believe this is the same as the techno-organic virus, if I'm not mistaken, later on.
Yep.
But Magic teleports them all away and says, "Not today, Satan." And Magus stands there monologuing on his way out, which gets brought up in issues after this, but we won't worry about because this is the only one, the New Mutants issue, that hits this particular event.
There you go.
So yeah, but back to what you have seen and what you will continue to see in a couple of cases, that some of the stuff is intertwining in stuff that is happening in each book's proper. Mm-hmm. So you will definitely see some stuff that is like, well, what does this have to do with anything? Well, it has something to do with what's ongoing in the books proper.
Right.
And now we get to, and I know this is, and Agent Stephanie's probably happy about this.
Oh, it's right up my alley. You
yes,
know this.
It is. Thor 373.
Yes. We are in the Thor issues of the crossover, the first of them. Mm-hmm. This is number 373. It is written by one Walter Simonson, of course. This is towards the tail end of his run on the book. The art is by Sal Buscema, and the lettering is always by the inimitable John Workman, who is still lettering Walt Simonson's book to this day. He's working on Ragnarok. Unbelievable.
It's
so
a Workman quality. Yes.
Anyway. Oh no!
Ooh, I'm dying!
Every time I've heard that term, I was like, man, this guy must be. Yeah. Anyway.
So funny. All right. So, we open this crossover issue with Thor traveling.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. Before you get into that, we must know, if you're watching the video, you are seeing the cover of it, and this is also another anniversary cover
Oh yes.
that is going around at the time. You see bearded Thor and a little bit of a silhouette on the side of his face, but
Mhm.
his beard's loud and proud. So there you
Yes. It is by Walter Simonson, so it is a really cool looking cover.
go.
Uh, Back to the story at hand. Um, Thor is on his way to Midgard, aka Earth, from Asgard, when a green bolt of energy strikes Thor and causes him to experience a temporary weakness in his entire body, which which fades, but is definitely going to come back to play a bigger role later on in these stories. Um, Thor makes his way back to Midgard. He is in these panels. He's referring to the events of the recent past, in which Odin fell into Muspelheim while battling Surtur, the fire demon, and Thor finds that the way to Muspelheim is blocked, and his hammer can't provide him transport to it. So Thor is looking to crash somewhere, heads first to his Bay Ridge. Shout out to Marvel for putting stuff in the real world. This is Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. Um, Thor is really, really Spartan. I mean, really Spartan. I mean, he's a Norse god, but
This is Sparta!
like literally a mattress on the floor. That's his apartment. That's Spartan, man. He's like, I can't crash here. So he's thinking, well, I'll go crash at Avengers Mansion. I don't feel like hanging out with the Avengers right now. I'm not feeling so good. I miss my dad. I miss Odin, you know. Um, while he's kind of ruminating and wallowing, um, it looks like he's flying to the Chrysler. Yeah, it's the Chrysler building, which isn't that close to Central Park, but I guess he's high enough where he can kind of see what's going on, and he foils a mugging in Central Park. I gotta love it. You gotta love it. You know, he busts the park prowler who the cops have been looking for some time. Um, Meanwhile, in Asgard, that's what the caption says. I love it. Meanwhile, in Asgard, we cut to some of the ongoing story arcs and plot threads that are happening in the Book of Thor. Some orphans who are eventually adopted by Volstagg are touched upon, as well as the great sword of Surtur, which is laying in the fields in Asgard after the battle between Surtur and Odin. We flash to Thor trying to reestablish his human alter ego, literally just himself in human clothes, not Dr. Donald Blake, who's frail and walking with a cane. This is gigantic blonde man and pretty heavily muscled person who's probably much bigger than most humans. So what does someone who looks like that do? Goes into construction. This is the Nick Fury Shield cover that they established for him. You know, Shield. They do good work. They find the perfect cover for someone like that. So, this happens in prior issues of Thor, and Thor basically tries to reestablish his human alter ego by hitting up a construction site that he had actually saved a couple times while he was working there. And the foreman on the job basically says, "Hey man, where you been? We missed you." Thor basically says, "I lost my dad. It's been tough." So what does the foreman Jerry do? Invites Thor, aka Sigurd Jarlson, to his home in Cobble Hill, which is another thing I love. Walt's like, Cobble Hill's a nice place, but maybe a little too fancy these days. We were living here when all these yuppies were just baby boomers. Oh my God. We have boutiques instead of Woolworths, cuisine instead of coffee shops. Getting too rich for my blood. They must be all nuts. They must all be nuts. I love it because things don't change; they stay the same. Love it. Still saying that about Cobble Hill and now the rest of Brooklyn as well. Gotta love it. So Jerry introduces Thor Sigurd to his wife Tina. I'm home, honey. I'm home, and he's got a friend. I've got a friend with me. And Jerry, unbeknownst to Thor, has not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, but 6 children with Tina.
Yeah, he's like the human Volstagg.
It's true. It is true. And Jerry's tweenage and teenage daughters are like, yeah, that's a good-looking dude in a beard. This is pre-hipster, pre-hipster Brooklyn, way pre-hipster Brooklyn. So Thor makes his way into the Sapristi home, and basically enamors himself with becomes enamored with the children and enamors himself of the children. The children really appreciate him, as well as the foreman's wife, and he is appointed as essentially a babysitter. And we'll get back to that in a second. We just have an interlude with Balder, as we follow up on another dangling plot line that's carrying forward in the Thor books. And Thor, in this interlude, in this brief interlude story, really is essentially babysitting this family and tells a tale of it's masked as a parable of Thor, who basically learns the lesson that no matter who you are, no one can carry you across the river or through problems that you might have. Not your father, not your mother, not your girl or boyfriend. You have to walk through the shadows on your own. That is the moral of the story. This is a part where I smiled from ear to ear. I had the biggest grin. And you know why? Because I never realized that this actually happened, that this is how Thor catches wind of what's happening in the Morlock tunnels.
Yep.
He's talking with frogs.
So hold that point real quick. Sorry. So me not being a real Thor reader at the time, and hearing kind of about Throg and what but not actually reading it, and coming into this issue, and them giving a little footnotes on what is going on? Like I said, I knew about Throg at the time, but I didn't hear about it. So seeing that whole scene is like, okay, this is a trip. And yes, and I remember it's like he's talking to the frogs, and these people are just sitting right here, just seeing him talk to the frogs like nobody's business, which kind of infers to what happens next. Which is
right. I was about to say it definitely informs what happens next. Like it's not what. I love how Simonson tries to write this, and it's probably unintentionally funny, but at the same time intentionally funny, because the way he portrays the scene is that Puddle Gulp and I forget the name of the other frog. I know Puddle Gulp. He's I don't know if he comes with another name, but Puddle Gulp is definitely a carryover character from the Thor frog issues. And it's the frogs that speak to Thor, and he understands. And the Sapristi children see him talking to the frogs.
Oh, and it goes a step over, because the frogs heard from the alligators that was in the Morlock tunnels from, I'm assuming it's from where Piper sent them out.
Correct.
But yeah. So they heard from the alligators of what's going on here. I'm pretty sure they've seen the bodies also, but still, what's going on. And this is how they get permission, and it gets relayed to Thor.
Right. So what I was gonna say is, though, the it's so well written. So basically, Thor's like, "Hey, you guys gotta go home. I gotta send you home. Guess what? Something terrible seems to be happening. I must look into it. I'm a sort of undercover policeman." And the kids are like, "Who talks to frogs?"
Right, and these kids like, I don't know who you fooling, but
it's so well done. He says, Thor comes back and says, yes, well, I know, you know what's funny about this? And maybe it's even funnier because I can hear Chris Hemsworth's voice saying this, right? I'm sort of reading it in Chris Hemsworth's voice in my head. Yes, well, there are many kinds of policemen, you see. And the kids come back and say, don't worry, Thor, your secret's safe with us. And he's like, what?
Right, and I'm for the video viewers, I'm putting that page right now so you can see.
Right. And the kids are like, yeah, you know, their dad, Jerry Sapristi, thought he was Spider-Man, but the kids are too smart for that one. They're like, yeah, you're too big for that. And with your hair, Thor seemed like a good guess. And besides, they had looked into his bag and had seen Mjolnir in his bag.
Right.
When he was over for dinner the other night. I love it. Kids are the darndest thing. Or say things, right?
Yes.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Anyway, Thor sends the kids back home, despite the fact that they ask about the Midgard serpent, you know, talk about reading up on Norse mythology. And Thor literally makes his way through. Like, I love that Walt doesn't even pretend to show the actual secret entrance into the Morlock tunnels in the park. He's literally just walking down into a hole, the hidden entrance here beside the Great Lawn. I love it. And basically, while Thor is making his way through the tunnels, we see that Hela, the goddess of death, actually the daughter of Loki in Norse mythology and in Marvel Comics. Hela is watching Thor and basically says, you're going to learn what hopelessness really is. Basically, she is very, very mad about some stuff that Thor pulled in previous issues, namely, what I'm referring to is the assault on Hel with the Einherjar and Scourge the Executioner. That's a big, you know, that's something that she is looking to gain revenge upon Thor for. Thor is making his way through the Morlock tunnels, makes his way past the carnage of all the dead Morlocks, and hears that. And here's Angel crying out as Blockbuster is ripping out more feathers out of his wings. Thor is ambushed. Well, not really ambushed. He comes upon Vertigo, Blockbuster, and Harpoon.
Well,
and
he hears them. He turns around and hears them coming.
Right. Well, what I was going to say is I thought it was just the two of them, but then I guess Vertigo's always in plain sight, and they just jump him. He knocks them away, and they run. Like I said, they run. Mm-hmm. When they see that they don't have the advantage, they run. They're slick. They're actually, in terms of tactics, they are fairly sound in the sense that the second that they lose the advantage, they withdraw to fight another day. And Thor is left to tend to the wounded who, at this point, he doesn't recognize. You know, gotta love Marvel crossover memories here. You know, he just doesn't recognize Angel when he sees him. He is wearing a different costume, though. So, but he realizes that the Marauders ran away, probably only to come back, and that's where we end this issue.
Yep. Let's see, what am I doing?
Power Pack.
Yep. And now we go into Power Pack number 27. I guess I couldn't say it. Written by Louise Simonson, penciler by Job.
Check the pause.
Yes.
I think they redid the reading order yesterday in Marvel Unlimited.
Oh, did they? Because
yes.
Oh, you're talking about in the app? Because the app is out. Oh no, the app was actually all right. It was on the webpage that's kind of weird, screwy. But
no. So if it was yesterday, just as a quick aside, yesterday the app had duplicate of every cover of every book and I think they were revising. They must be listening to us. They must know that we're doing this event, and they're like, "Hey, you need to read one more book." They actually added Uncanny X-Men 214 at the end of this.
Oh, weird. I didn't see that. Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think.
And the final issue in the crossover event is not Daredevil 238, but in fact Uncanny 213
Oh,
and
wait.
214.
Well, yeah. Actually, I think I did see that. No, I think I did see that in here, but it's
This was different yesterday.
right. But I think, well, we'll get to it. But I remember what happens in that book, and it's kind of tangential, also, sort of. Like it's basically tying up a loose end.
Right, but again, it involves that other Marauder,
Right.
who's on another mission. So
Right.
that's my point. So it's funny that we, that as we're going through this, I'm looking at this like this is not how this screen looked yesterday. So anyway, you're on Power Pack number 27.
I am on Power Pack 27, and you can see the cover right here, which is not, not one of the anniversary covers, but because I think we're past that point at this point. So the Power Pack the Power family, because their name is actually Power, last names are Power, and Franklin, a very young Franklin Richards at this time, who if this tells you something, goes by the name of Tattletale, because and this is when Franklin was like, yeah, he's got his mutant powers, but he had to block himself, but he still got certain powers that he deals with. Not unlike another mutants that we have that we see around here, but we'll get to that. Anyway, the Power Pack and Franklin Richards and their parents, not the Richards, are watching TV over at the Powers place, and they see XFactor and Exterminators, and they talking about XFactor and how Exterminators. At least one of them starts talking about how the Exterminators are the good guys, and XFactor would be hunting all the mutants, or hunting all the mutants, and they probably would think that they were mutants if they caught wind of them or something like that. Then some horseplay between the two older. I guess. Well, I don't know if Jack is the young, but I don't know too much about Power Pack, and I'm kind of glad that Agent 70. I mean, not Agent 70. Actually, I kind of wish Matt was here, but at the same time, it's probably for the best.
Shout out to at Wang 97.
Absolutely. So he's here in spirit because Power Pack is here. So horseplay ensues and some powers get used, and the oldest, I believe, is Alex. Was like, hey, don't use your powers, fool. Somebody might see us. And by the way, again, this is most likely very shortly after their powers had been switched in a previous issue or two or something like that. So there's going to be a little bit of that going on. So the kids go to sleep, and Franklin dreams of Leech and Caliban using his power, and that gets projected out, and all the boys see it. Then the girls come in and get appraised of the situation, after they wake up Franklin. So they all suit up and go down to the Morlock tunnels. They talk about, in the transit, they talk about the switch powers, because they just switched, with the exception of Franklin, and their new names that they were trying to give themselves at this time. Let's see. So yeah. Meanwhile, down in the tunnels, when they get down in the tunnels, they hear screaming and go to check. We're gonna find out it's Scalp Hunter on another killing spree. And Leech and Caliban, who are like right near where that is going down, is hiding in the pipe still. And this was after Artie went and go get help. And as we've already seen, Power Pack gets attacked by Sabretooth.
This is scary. This was so scary when I read this.
Mm-hmm.
Having not ever read this before, I was like, what?
Yeah, it was like, yeah, exactly. Because it was like, wait, Sabretooth against a bunch of kids? Like, this is not good. It's not good at all. But they actually handle themselves, even with switch powers that they still don't have control over yet. They handle themselves all right. And I think Jack was like, yeah, you got to use my power and kill him. Kill him, do the thing, because I would do that. But Alex doesn't. They actually do a hit and run tactic where, I think this is probably my mistake here, but later he does it intentionally. But he uses his power and knocks a hole in the ceiling, which buries Sabretooth, and they run away. And they meet up with Wolverine at this time, who's looking for Sabretooth, just so happened. And they've apparently have met Wolverine before this. So, but the funny thing about it was like Sabretooth comes around and they were like, Mr. Wolverine? I'm like, nope, that's not him, because he just attacks him and obviously it doesn't look like Wolverine. So like I said, after that, and they run into actual Wolverine, and he tells them like, y'all need to go home because I'm tracking Sabretooth, and it's not safe here, and things are going on. You need to promise me. It's like either I can follow you home, or I can go do what I got to do and try to save some people's lives. And it was like, all right, we are going to leave. You go do your thing, but they actually don't leave.
Mm-hmm.
They promise to leave, but they actually don't. Let's see. Oh, he tells, this is like I said, that's to happen. They go to find Leech still. They come across Annalise dead body, which who got killed in 211, but don't find Leech. They think that XFactor is behind all of this, and not knowing much about the Marauders, and so they kind of get that in their mind. Then we cut to XFactor, who are taking the Morlocks that they found back to the base. The team all gets back together, and Cyclops decides he wants to go back into the tunnels. And actually, I got a note here for myself. Is like, well, I wonder if this is where Jerk Cyclops starts, because there's a whole lot of talk from him about, look, the man you thought, because he was talking to Jim, like, the man I was at the time is not the same as I am, and I don't like this person, and what, this and that and the other, I don't like myself, and this and that and the other. So I'm kind of wondering if this is where the start of Jerk.
I was going to say, it probably predates this when he leaves Madeline prior to go back with Jean Grey.
Which is also mentioned. You're right. Yeah.
That's probably where it starts. I mean, he was always kind of a jerk, even when he was with the X-Men, but not like that, right?
Right. But so somewhere in between there. I'm somewhere in between this and X-Factor. It's somewhere in the start of X-Factor. This was pretty much being born. So we can fairly safely say that. But anyway, back to the thing is this. So X-Factor gets back to the thing. They do that thing. Power Pack ends up finding Leech and Artie, and hilariously, I should probably pull this up. No, I'm not gonna do that. The flying kids try to go towards Leech, who cancels their powers, and they all fall. And they were like, "Hey, we're here to save you."
Yeah, that was great.
Because I remember seeing that. I was like, okay, well, that was dumb, but at the same time, hey, that was pretty cute.
I was about to say, hold on to that thought.
Mm-hmm.
It must be noted that the writer of Power Pack at this time is one Louise Simonson.
Yeah, I did mention that. Yeah.
Okay, and the art is by John Bogdanov. So it's it's all in the like we said earlier, is all in the family for this crossover.
Mm-hmm. So when they find Leech and Caliban, they try to look after them, and they I think at some point around here they tell Leech that Annalise is dead, but I think that comes a little bit later. But they get attacked by the Marauders, and they defend themselves. They were like, Leech, stay here with Franklin. Which, here's the weird part. So Leech is staying with Franklin. Franklin is a mutant, but apparently his powers is not affected by Leech because he ends up using them a little bit. But while
he says Leech, go way back there, way back here. So he leaves Leech.
Oh, right. Okay. Gotcha.
Leech some distance away so that he can do what he does.
Okay. Yeah, because that part was kind of, when in rereading this, I was like, wait, what? So, but yeah, now that I see that. Okay, cool. So anyway, the Marauders are fighting the Power Pack, and they're doing their thing. Franklin does get to use his power and try to antagonize Arclight, who's shaking up the place. The long story short, they kind of defend themselves, and once again, the oldest power blasts the ceiling so that they could get away. One of them got smacked into the wall because they were super dense and tried to do a power bomb on. Actually, it's not a power bomb. I'm just joking. But they tried to drop on Arclight, which doesn't go the way she planned it. But yeah, like I said, they try to bury the Marauders like they did with Sabretooth, but it doesn't quite happen that way. One of the other ones hit him with a solar plexus, as one Bugs Bunny would say, and then goes to take out Arclight with one punch because he has because he has gravity altering powers. So he
Mm-hmm.
makes his fist ultra heavy and ultra dense and smacks her away. Scrambler tries to take him out while he's gloating, but XFactor shows up, and of course, in fashion, Harpoon throws a spear, and they bug out. The Marauders bugger out.
Mm-hmm.
So, excuse me, Exterminators. Makes that decision, but whatever, it's still XFactor. So Power Pack meets XFactor / Exterminators. Cyclops is like, hey, you kids handle yourself pretty decently, and cool. They find Caliban, and it's like, okay, hey, and I think this is when they tell Leech that Annalee is dead, and she starts crying, and this was a very touching scene back then when I read it originally. Still is now, actually, because Leech starts crying, talking about he wants Mama loves Leech, and this kind of stuff, and it's like, oh, that's sad. And then Cyclops is in the back, was like, oh yeah, I know how this kid feels, and basically, and he goes to comfort Leech and say, hey, y'all can come back with us to our compound because we got some of your other people here if you know them. And he tells Beast and Iceman, who got hurt previously, to run them back to the compound. And Iceman holding Leech loses his powers, so they got to walk. And it's just as well because Beast is kind of hurt and would probably be slowed down anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So they take off with Leech and Caliban, who's hurt, and then the rest of them were like, "Hey." Oh, and then Power Pack is like, "Hey, it's late. We got to go," because they didn't know what time it was. It was like, "Oh, we got to get back home because our parents is going to worry that we were not home." So they leave. And then that's pretty much where we round out the end of the book, where they're on their way home, and one of the kids are showing off their new gravity powers, and also that the wings that they got from the other person who previously held the power, was destroyed, and he doesn't need them. So, but thanks anyway. And then that's when the book ends.
Right. And that leads us to the next issue of the Mighty Thor, number 374, that crosses over into the Mutant Massacre. This issue is written by Walt Simonson with art by Sal Buscema and lettering by John Workman.
Now wait, hang on for a second. Hold on, before you even get to that point, because this is also where a point of contention comes in, because so if you're looking at the map, the mutant map, and I got it pulled up right here, you see New Mutants, Thor 373, then Power Pack, and then it goes back over to X-Men 212.
I think that was the original order.
Right.
And I think this reworked order is what's in Marvel Unlimited right now.
Right. So just all I'm saying is for those who come back behind this and read it, kind of be wary of that. Now, I don't think it matters either way, but I think I read it in the original order. As a matter of fact, I know I did. So
I read it in original order yesterday.
Yeah. So just take that into account. So we're kind of skipping back and going for skipping back for a second. So anyway, continue.
All right. So in this issue of Thor, we come right back to, we literally pick up right where the previous issue left off, with Thor not yet able to take down the Angel from being impaled by harpoons on the walls of the tunnel. And as we mentioned earlier, the Marauders are really good at withdrawing when they don't have the advantage, and they come right back with renewed attacks. And Thor, usually wouldn't have any issues taking on these, this level of competition. Blockbuster's pretty big and strong. Harpoons, powered up harpoons are fairly deadly, and obviously Vertigo power is, something that throws lots of heroes off. But come on, this is the God of Thunder here, and he shows it after he takes a couple of their shots, and he's like, you know what, let the lightning and the storm speak with the voice of Thor, and basically they all scatter. Right? So finally, they make another break for it. Thor takes the Angel down, and Angel's like, whatchamacallit? No, actually, Yeah, no, he does get a little weepy and woe is me here too. Yep, just
Mm-hmm.
leave, let me die. Thor's like, nope. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
he's channeling Pariah in this moment.
yeah, oh gosh, pariah. Thor's like, oh, let me, I'll get you out of here. Part of the tunnel comes down on them, probably weakened from Thor going Thor. Talk about ham. Talk about what we call it. Kanye made the acronym HAM, going ham, a thing.
Mm.
Imagine going Thor on something, right? So this is Thor going Thor, and and some parts of the tunnel can't take it, so he is hastened on his way with the Angel. We cut to Balder and what he's trying to do, and this is just an interlude because we're dealing with the after effects of um, Odin and his battle with Surtur. It looks like Balder is making a deal to try to spoiler alert for a 30-plus-year-old comic book. He's trying to resurrect one of the deceased ravens of Odin, and he is successful. Um, Meanwhile, we cut back to the bodies of the dead in the Morlock tunnels with Harpoon, Blockbuster, and Sabretooth, having uh, regroup, having had a chance to retreat and regroup. Harpoon and Sabretooth are making fun of Blockbuster of all things. And that ticks off Blockbuster, and he's off to take on Thor. Meanwhile, Thor is carrying the Angel, and he's trying to get him out of the tunnel. He runs into Artie, and Artie is communicating with Thor, and Thor figures out how Artie is communicating with these visual images, and basically relays to Artie that no, the Angel's not dead, but he's got to help him, and he's trying to get Artie to come with him when Blockbuster breaks through the ceiling. And this is a shocking thing that fans of Thor won't ever expect because you don't think Blockbuster's this strong. But what happens is that he lands on Thor and basically uses his body weight to break Thor's left arm. And you're like, what? What the heck is going on here?
Mm. And so is he. So is Thor same thing in that.
Oh, and you're forced to remember what happened last issue, and that's going to be expanded upon before this issue is done.
Mm-hmm.
Thor is hurt. He is definitely not used to having this happen, especially fighting someone who's not that strong. He's strong, but not, this is Thor. Thor is used to taking on the Hulk. So, and this not happening. So this is very odd. The Angel um, uh, gathers his strength and jumps on Blockbuster to distract him. And Thor, with his good right arm, uses Mjolnir to knock the hell out of Blockbuster. I don't think he's dead, but I think, does he get killed here? Because
I don't think
because
so.
because Thor does say, I hope Hela deals with you, jerkface, for breaking.
Yeah, maybe it does. Yeah.
Right. Because it's left vague. I'd have to look up whether or not he does in fact die in this issue. Angel, Artie, and Thor make their way towards, I guess, Artie is sensing that XFactor, the rest of XFactor is close, including Cyclops and Jean Grey. We have an interlude with Volstagg and Mick and Kevin in Asgard. We come back to Artie and Thor, and they do in fact run into Cyclops and Jean Grey. Obviously, Cyclops is like, that's the Avenger Thor. He's got Angel, and they finally figure out who is who and what's what. And Cyclops is like, hey man, what's up with your arm? And Cyclops puts together a quick splint for Thor's arm by blasting some metal, some it looks like a ladder. Yep, he blasts the ladder and forms it into a quick splint that they use to help support Thor's broken arm. Jean, Cyclops, and already take Angel away, while Thor is going further into the tunnels. Thor is beset upon by Hela, the goddess of death, who informs him of what has happened. Talk about exposition. She's like, this is what's happening. You are cursed. Your bones are now as brittle as those of an old woman, and when they break, they will not heal. And despite the fact, and the curse is that his bones are brittle and broken, but he cannot die. She takes that ability away from him. She has cast him out of hell. So in the absence of death is eternal life. The god of thunder will live forever, but he's going to want to die because he's going to be easily breakable and brittle. So Thor goes Thor on the tunnels. He's mad. All right. Hela has enacted a dose of revenge for the events of Thor's issue 360 and 362 that I mentioned earlier. And Thor calls down the lightning inside the tunnel. So all that hyper energy like stuff that Cap called down on Thanos in Endgame is being cast inside the closed, gaseous atmosphere that's within the sewers and the Morlock tunnels, and that causes a fire to break out, and basically Thor, as he intended, gives all of the dead a Viking pyre funeral.
Also, wait, are you? Yeah. So yeah, there's a couple of things to note about this and that. But prior to that, so when he was, I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but when Thor was talking to Cyclops and was talking to Cyclops specifically, Cyclops was like, look, when we get back upstairs, up to the surface, you're gonna hear about some stuff about us.
Oh, yeah, I missed. I glossed over that.
Yeah, so just don't worry about that. And Thor's like, look, I have learned a long time ago, don't not to judge the book by its cover, so you're good. Don't worry about it.
He actually makes a Spider-Man reference.
Yes.
He's like, don't judge a man by what the newspapers say about him.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. So, but then that's when they bugger. That's when they leave, and then that's when the thing with Hela happens, and Thor actually, as 87 says, goes Thor and says, Hela, and calls down the lightning and does all that stuff. Now, here's the thing about that part: he does give the dead a Viking funeral, but he's also sent basically a firestorm throughout tunnels where people are probably still alive. Well, are still alive, as we will see in coming issues.
Right. Well, this is not, no one's ever going to accuse Thor of being, considerate of everybody.
So I was like, well, that's because when I was reading this, I was like, okay, but there's other people still, whatever. So Thor's, but yeah, at the end of this, like Thor's just doing his thing. So, which brings us to, or wraps us back around to, Uncanny X-Men number 212. You gotta excuse me on this one because it's starting to get late.
What's that?
I said you have to excuse me on this one because it's starting to get late, but we're gonna run through this one. So yeah, we at the beginning of this issue we see, oh, this is Chris Claremont writing, and I had to look this up. Rick Leonardi as the guest artist.
Yes.
And Dan Green as the inker. If you want to go that far over it. So, and as you can see on the the video, I got the thing up. So yeah, Wolverine's in the tunnels hunting. He's going through all the deaths, and he gets a psychic flash from Betsy Braddock, aka Cyclops, who they have never met before this, because he was like wait, what's going on? And she introduced herself as Psylocke and a telepath, and that Storm asked her to do it, so to pass you along some information. Now, which is weird because she had already thought Storm and Wolverine had already basically talked, and said the exact stuff that she's relaying. So this was the part that was kind of weird in a previous issue. Matter of fact, in the previous issue. So because so Psylocke basically says, "Hey, bring in a prisoner so we can interrogate him," and that this is important. She basically stresses that it's important because he already knew that. She's like, "Yeah, all right, I got one," and one's all she's gonna get. So that happens, and then they talk for a little bit more, and then he dips out, and we see Betsy in Cerebro. Monologuing to herself about about the resources of the school and whatnot. Then we cut to the infirmary where Storm and Callisto and a bunch of people are looking after their injured folks. And Storm's like, while trying to keep a brave front, kind of having a little pity party on herself because she's over with Nightcrawler and it's like, you need to get better because I need your laugh and your smile and things about you. So, because so that's the thing about this version of the X-Men, because they were fairly close. This is when it cemented the family dynamic about them, I guess. But we won't even get into that. And then they check up on Kitty Pryde, who's in a bubble, and slowly.
I was about to say, pause your thought, and I appreciate where you're going with this, because this is a time of team lineup transition, and that leads to. And the events that lead up to that lineup transition is what kind of pushed Storm over the edge, especially with her losing her powers temporarily. So,
right.
And we all know what's going on in the background, what's being set up by this team being in transition. So,
and in fact, on that the map of the reading order, it says, "See who the new X-Men will be" in the top right corner, as you can see from the video.
Right.
So that's kind of telling there. But Colossus is holding watch over Kitty, who can't speak apparently, but she's still phased and getting worse. And they talk about her state while she's standing right there, and Colossus is mad. Storm's like, yeah, Peter's also gentle, but man, he's trying to get revenge. And again, Storm's kind of having her own pity party. It was like, because she's the one leading the X-Men, so she feels responsible for a lot of this, or for all of this, even though a lot of it's not her fault. She leaves, kind of have some time to herself, but then she jumps off a waterfall and has a dip. Colossus goes to see Psylocke for some reason. Not even for some reason, because they're looking for Storm, but then he passes out right on top of her in his armored form, which that had to hurt.
No, I was about to say, it does have consequences.
Yeah.
This does have consequences. What I love about the way this story is plotted and told, every little thing that happens seems to have a consequence. That being one of them. It does come back as part of the story.
So then we cut to Rogue, and I don't know who this person is. It looks like Rambo.
No, I know he's a support personnel. I think he's a friend of the school. I think.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, I was kind of sort of reading X-Men around this time, but mostly for the event stuff like this. So there are some stuff that is still lost on me, despite the fact I was specifically around this time reading XFactor for certain. And because of the fact that this was starting to cross over, and I think this is probably where I started getting back into X-Men a little bit more. But anyway, Psylocke calls out to Rogue psychically and tells her to come on because I got this big organic metal dude on top of me. And Rogue takes off and gets Colossus off of her. And apparently he's kind of stuck, like a statue.
Right, he's having problems.
Yes, and he can't revert back to normal, and that's partially because of probably what's happened to him with Harpoon, more than likely.
And Riptide. Just a lot.
Well, yeah, but the Riptide is the side, but because you would know that Harpoon was the one that's kind of disrupting Kitty's powers and probably with a spear. So, but yeah, definitely it was the combination of all of that. So you see Magneto coming in trying to take care of Betsy and Myra and trying to comfort her, and they use her to psychically look up Storm. And Magneto's there just kind of hovering, doing nothing. Then we cut back to Wolverine, and Some would argue one of the fights of the century at the time, or at least a decade, because it's one of the many matches between. Well, we don't know who it is at the time, but we end up finding out it's Sabretooth because he's found his prey. We cut back to Storm, who's still having her kind of pity party, but getting the psychic links getting psychic messages from Psylocke. Then she wants to leave alone. She tears off her clothes and look. I wasn't a little kid at the time, but I'm just saying I was young enough to be like, which actually is a side story because Mohawk Storm was kind of off-putting for a second, but quickly got into that. Anyway, next up we'll move right past that.
But that woke everybody up.
It absolutely did because we're like, damn, Mohawk Storm's kind of whatever, even without powers. But anyway, cut back to the mansion where they're trying to see what's going on with Colossus. Psylocke tries to probe his mind, which it doesn't. Well, she basically finds out like, yeah, he's alive, but it doesn't. I don't know which doesn't know what's going on because that's not much help. So, Magneto tries to use his powers to try to heal Colossus, which actually kind of works, but he can't move. He's stuck the way he was, and Magneto kind of falls over because he used up a lot of his powers.
And in need of oil. That is what he is. Seriously, shout out to the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, basically. So it's like, okay, well, so now he's laying there on the ground, paralyzed, and Magneto's can't do much else. Thanks for helping, but you didn't really help that much. Cutting back to Wolverine, to which we find out he's fighting Sabretooth, who's got this other Morlock up against the wall and about to gut him. And of course, they do what Sabretooth and Wolverine always do and have such delightful banter because of their history. Which, by the way, going back a second, like you were talking about Sabretooth meeting up Cyclops, and Cyclops kind of underestimating him for not knowing. Right. I remember reading this. Well, no, actually, I remember rereading this. In rereading this, it was like, well, wait, he should be familiar with Sabretooth. But then I'm thinking about the X-Men, the animated series, which I had seen, obviously before, rereading. So I was like, well, why does he know? Why is he taking Sabretooth like that when he should know better? But he doesn't and wouldn't, because the Sabretooth didn't come along until like the new X-Men came through and didn't have much exposure to him. Anyway, moving right along. So yeah, they're still talking. They fight. They go back and forth.
They're fighting somebody though.
Huh?
They're fighting over somebody.
Right. Like I mentioned that because Sabretooth's got this Morlock that he's got pinned up against the wall and was about to gut him.
But he's the healer.
Oh right.
He's the healer. So there's a reason why as this fight progresses, there's a reason why it ends the way it does.
Oh, and a name comes up in the course of this explanation of Mr. Sinister.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a matter of fact, yes, we find out that he was the one who sent the Marauders down there, and also uses Wolverine's famous line of being the best of what we do. And then the fight progresses again, and you see a nice striking scene of or panel of Wolverine lunging at him. So we cut back to the lake where Storm, here was another thing that was going on at the time. Storm had lost her powers, but every now and then you would see scenes like this where the wind's blowing and the lightning's going and maybe rain happens and people are still like, wait, did Storm do this? Knowing good and full well that she's lost her powers. But this also kind of plays into something else, which I think probably came up because I'm not sure if I don't know, can't remember if it was the case. I don't know if you remember, but she lost her powers, but she was still kind of in touch to a point to where she has some effect. But we don't know if that was the actual thing or just happenstance.
Right.
Because we know she lost her powers, but it still kind of comes out.
It's definitely teased.
Right. So Callisto runs up on Storm, who has changed clothes into a nice little summer dress. And then they talk, by fighting, because that's how they get along with each other, because Callisto's not trying to let Storm have a pity party up here, and Storm's actually trying to do it. So they fight, and Storm tries to run away. To which, Storm's like, "Leave me alone, let me go, do it." I don't know why don't you just let me have this, man? But nope. Cut back to Sabretooth and Wolverine's fighting, and they still mixing it up, and Healer's still out there on the ground. And again in tactics, which we've seen many times before, Wolverine jukes out Sabretooth and brings down a tunnel or whatever. And Sabretooth's like, "Hey, this is not over by a long shot," and then Wolverine picks up Healer and takes him away.
Right.
We cut back to Callisto and Storm by the lake, where they're finally hashing it out. Callisto, after Callisto talks some sense into him, gives back Storm's vest. And that dress with that vest is actually a pretty good look, personally. But, it's different. It is what it is. I don't know who's doing design for them right now. She doesn't keep this look, obviously, because, And then the last page, we see Wolverine coming out of the tunnels to meeting up with Rogue and fake Rambo. And they take him out of the tunnels, where Thor's heat storm catches up with them, and Wolverine's like, "Get out of the way."
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, no, it's not even Wolverine. It's Rogue who sees it and gets everybody out of the way. Excuse me. Yep. And fuses the tunnel shut. Looks like. So, and they don't like, what in the world is going on, and they don't know, and they also notice that, it doesn't close the tunnel, but it's basically cleans up the whole tunnel, and it's like they notice that the tunnel is like cleaned and nobody's around.
Right.
So, and they also make a point to note that we're 40 miles away from Manhattan, so whatever just happened killed a bunch of folk. Including the New Mutants specifically. I was like, if the New Mutants was down there, they're probably dead. So,
mm-hmm.
And that is where we find out that you need to read New Mutants number 48 to find out what happens with that. But that has nothing to do with the event.
Right.
And we go to the next issue.
Now, in the revised Marvel Unlimited reading order, the next issue is XFactor number 11.
Nope, still holds up. Yep.
Written by Louise Simonson and penciled by Walt Simonson. Love it.
And I believe, we're not necessarily to the penultimate issue, but we're very much coming down to the stretch.
Yep, we're almost there, folks. Bear with us. We're going to speed through these to get to the end. So, this is where Beast and Iceman are transporting Caliban and Leech to the XFactor headquarters when they are jumped by some Morlocks who these are the Morlocks who are more whatchamacallit, who are more combative than the average Morlock. These particular Morlocks called the Drain Dwellers, the weaker Morlocks. Because of Leech, everyone's powers have been neutralized, so this is strictly hand to hand until Leech is sent away from there, told to run. And when the powers are returned, Beast and Iceman kind of are not taken down, but they definitely on the losing side of a skirmish between this group of Morlocks and with this group of Morlocks. Meanwhile, Cyclops, Jean, and Artie are taking Angel topside, and they're talking and they're recounting what has happened over the last several crossover issues, including the Power Pack issues, and dealing with Thor. We have, as part of this recap sequence of pages, Artie takes an image from Warren Worthington's recent memories and puts up a psychic image of Angel holding Jean Grey, and Cyclops has his own, as you say, a pity party. He's like, oh man, what am I doing here? But then Artie shakes him out of it, and some trouble gets them shaken out of their immediate stupor. They run into Iceman and Beast holding off this group of Morlocks. Oh no, they call themselves the Tunnelers. That's what it is. So stupid. So they call themselves the Tunnelers, and they're not the drain dwellers like the other Morlocks. They recognize the group as the Exterminators, not as XFactor or anything like that. They're mutant freedom fighters. So they agree to follow XFactor up to XFactor's headquarters after some convincing by one of the members, Scaleface, who can turn herself into a lizard. They're making their way up, and Caliban is like, there's something coming. There's something coming. No, he gets mad actually. He gets mad that everybody's dead. They hear, they hear Thor's lightning firestorm, and Cyclops basically tells everyone to hurry up. They get the door shut behind them, and they make it out of there by the hair of their chinny chin chins. But again, they run into Cameron Hodge on FaceTime, and Berserker, one of the Tunnelers, is like, you guys are fake, blah, blah, blah. You're not who you say you are. And, Skids is trying to tell them the Exterminators are XFactor, and it's all a ruse to try to better mutant kind, and they're not trying to have it. So the Tunnelers escape the XFactor compound, but of course, this is 1980s New York. They get jumped by a bunch of gang members who yell out muties and shoot at them, and take out the Blowhard, I think his name was, with a pipe. And they basically get taken down by the rest of the Tunnelers. The Tunnelers' exploits against these gang members makes the news, and of course, the cops are going to go after them. We have an interlude where Apocalypse recruits the second horseman of Apocalypse, War, out of an iron lung. We flash back to Cyclops and Jean Grey trying to rescue the Tunnelers from being shot by the NYPD, and they are absolutely positively unsuccessful. Scaleface, the lizard lady, gets taken out by the cops. What does this do? Berserker. He's got electromagnetic powers. He's trying to take revenge on the NYPD when Cyclops blasts him into New York Bay, and he basically shorts out in the water. Cyclops and Jean Grey escape with Mask. That's Masque. He of the mutant power of transforming people's skin and features just with a touch of his hands. And we also have an interlude with Boom Boom.
This is where we actually meet her, I believe.
This is her first appearance?
Mm-hmm, I believe so.
Ah, okay.
Or she, if this is not the meeting her, this is like another run-in with her, because I think this is leading up to her, meeting XFactor.
Right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, this is one of her. If it's not her origin, this is definitely one of her first meetings. I believe this is actually her first meeting, though.
Right. Right, and the final sequence of panels, it's just it's literally a third of the page, but the bombshell reveal in the final sequence of panels is that the Angel has suffered grievous harm to his wings, and they must be amputated. And that's where we end this issue.
Oh wait, so this is not her intro. That's okay. And now it's coming back to me now that I'm seeing this. So because she showed up, that's right. She was in Secret Wars 2. I blocked that out because she was palling around with the Beyonder for a minute.
Okay.
So yeah, this was definitely not her intro. And I believe is Secret War. I mean, Secret Wars 2 was probably a few, probably like X Factor had just started, so it's probably like 5 or 6 issues in. So I think this is like, she's showing up, but whether she got with the crew or not. And now we head back to, let's see, where are we now? X Factor number 11. We are going back to Uncanny X-Men number 213.
Pause. You know what's funny about the reading order?
Uh-huh.
You know what's in the reading order now in the Marvel Unlimited app?
What's
Derek
that?
238.
Mm-hmm. See, like I told you,
They literally revised this yesterday or today.
I want to say that part has been like that though. I feel very confident because, like I said, the book and the app are different. I mean, the
website.
The website and the app are kind of different by the way they have it structured.
I was gonna say yesterday, the last issue of this event in the app, even before yesterday, was the Daredevil book.
Mm-hmm.
Very funny.
So yeah, it's kind of weird. So you kind of got to watch that. That's why it's sometimes it's good to look up another read order just for kind of reference and go with one you feel like. But
all
yes.
Right, so 13.
So Uncanny X-Men number 213. We start off. By the way, it is called Psylocke. Not that it makes any difference, but we do start off with the fact that Psylocke, Betsy Braddock, is in Cerebro, and she's monologuing to herself, talking about how she's a stranger here, and she's using Cerebro to seek out mutants, but she's also psychically linking to like people like Rogue, who's flying around, and they talk for a little bit. And meanwhile, she gets back to searching the whole, searching the mansion. She goes through with her butterfly psychic projection as she used to do back this time. Because I think she really she stopped doing that part once she did this body swap. But she was still using butterflies.
No, I was about to say it's a different looking butterfly.
Right.
It's like a more, whatchamacallit, it's less fantasy ish. This is a very fantasy looking butterfly. Just wanted to note that this is the first issue of Uncanny X-Men penciled by Alan Davis. I got this autographed by Alan Davis a couple of years back, and it was an honor and a privilege to meet him. He's an older gentleman. He's still churning out work at a great work. So it was very cool. I'm glad to have this autograph by him.
Yeah. So Betsy's basically psychically patrolling the grounds or looking through the grounds, and she checks in on all of the hurt X-Men, including Nightcrawler and Kitty Pryde, and I think Colossus.
Mm-hmm.
She talks about the New Mutants who are off doing whatever else, and she talks about them and her, I guess her mentorship or whatever she is. She's definitely, an older figure to them. So, and it shoots to a picture, and then also talk about New Mutant Annuals number 2, which I guess there's the story between them. But it cuts back to the tunnels where Wolverine and the rest of the team are kind of are basically after the tunnel was raised by one Thor, God of Thunder. They are going to investigate it, and Wolverine's like, "Yep, everything's gone. It's clean. Like there's like, this whole place is clean as a whistle." Callisto's mad because she wants to know who did this, and Thor's like, "It was lightning." I mean, it's not Storm. Yeah, Storm was like, "It was lightning." And she basically, the logic leap is like, okay, it's lightning, so Callisto's like, well, if it's lightning, you did this? Because they didn't know anything about Thor. And Callisto kind of comes at her mad about it, but but they still don't know necessarily. Magneto kind of pipes up, and then finally mentions the fact that, hey, the Hellfire Club said I can come and join them. And they have a talk about that. which is interrupted by because obviously that's not the thing they would ever want to do. Psylocke kind of comes in and was like, hey, oh, Psylocke is like, hey, I want to be able to help, and I got an idea, so here's what I want to do. So they agreed to do that. Storm and Wolverine are like, well, you know what, we can use her, so, but she's also still green, so she's sure we can, you know, a lot of stuff is happening nowadays, so she can help, but we gotta still kind of get her right because she's still new and all. So Psylocke is still in Cerebro. She gets seized up because something happened to her, and she falls out of Cerebro for some race. Then we cut back to, hey, guess what? You didn't think we were gonna get back to this, but we certainly do. Alison Blair, aka Dazzler. We see her. We see her walking along, and she sees the image of Malice in a store window, and finally gets taken over slowly and surely by Malice, and basically comes out. Not necessarily comes out, but she kind of brings out herself again. Like, yeah, she's a Dazzler, and here's my new style, and it's not Disco Dazzler, and it's not Olivia Newton-John jumpsuit Dazzler, but it's the in between time there. So we'll get back to that in a minute. Rogue gets attacked by Sabretooth, and gets knocked around, or at least so we think. Sabretooth also attacks Betsy, aka Psylocke, who kind of gets up because of after her psychic whatever happened to her.
Right. No, she actually encounters Victor Creed's psyche, but she says, whatchamacallit, the stranger's hostile mind is worse than any beast's, and the input was more than. So she basically got feedback. So it kind of for a loop for a second. That's what happens.
Right, but she's actually fighting him in this case. So we wait. Yeah, she's actually fighting. So Rogue was the one that was come across the psychic position, right? Because
no, whatchamacallit, no, like the part where Psylocke gets shocked, that's her sensing Sabretooth.
Oh, right.
And right, so the next sequence, the next part of the sequence is Sabretooth knocks out Rogue temporarily, and then he makes his way into the mansion to where Psylocke is accessing Cerebro.
Right. And if you haven't figured it out yet, from that last exchange that I just said about the X-Men taking Psylocke in, and her being too green and whatnot, you're going to come into the end result of that if you don't already see it. So Sabretooth chases Psylocke around the mansion. Moira sees this on the camera and it's like, okay, she's trying to lead Sabretooth away because we got sick people here and we don't want them to find them. So Betsy does the best she can in her nice frilly dress, throws a barbell at him, but Sabretooth catches it, throws it back at her, and she falls down the window. So the thing you do end up finding out is like, yes, even this version of Betsy has some guts. Like she kind of comes off a little timid in this one early on at this point, up until this point. But you can see she's got guts, and she's willing to do what she's got to do. So she falls out the window anyway, grabs a ledge or an awning or something. Sabretooth kind of comes after her, and they fall into Aurora's room or her garden. Well, actually, it's a room because her room is her
she
garden.
grabs the gutter and pulls herself up.
Right.
The gutter of the roof. And she falls through the skylight into into Storm's greenhouse.
Right. And they continue to fight her. She grabs a big knife off the wall and tries to hold off Sabretooth, who chin checks her. And he kind of gets the better of her until Wolverine comes in and like, hey, how about you roll up on me instead of the woman? But then Sabretooth's like, yeah, as soon as I take care of her, I'm coming after you. And then Storm's like, no, I'm just gonna jab you in the face with this pipe, and I'm gonna take you down myself, which he does, and gets Psylocke away from Sabretooth. And of course, which leads part 2 of Sabretooth versus or Wolverine versus Sabretooth battle in Storm's greenhouse, which I recognize neither one of these people really care where they are when they're fighting. So,
The battle does come out of the greenhouse.
It
soon.
does, but yes, but like I said, at the moment they're just kind of like here mixing it up. And Sabretooth kind of swipes at Wolverine, gets a little bit of blood, and kind of taunts him. And then the fight just goes from here in a great sequence of panels, by the way, for the time. You see them going at it, which again spills out of Aurora's room out into the pool. And Magneto kind of comes up and tries to help out by making some shackles. And Betsy's like, "Hold on, wait a minute." While Sabretooth is engaged with Wolverine, we can find out what's going on here because I can probe his mind. So instead of doing that, let them fight. Why they do that? And sure enough, that's what happens. Psylocke calms herself, puffs out her chest and says it with her chest while they're fighting. And again, we get more battle panels, as I'm going to refer to them, and sees a whole bunch of stuff in Sabretooth's mind. We see the fact that Wolverine and Sabretooth fought before. See the Marauders. We see a shadow of their master, but we kind of already know who that is. And we also still at the same times the fight is spilling out to the outskirts of the property, where Wolverine and Sabretooth are spilled into the ocean. Sabretooth disappears, and Rogue goes in and gets Wolverine. And Wolverine's like, "Yeah, we're gonna find this Joker if it's the last one we do." And of course, after this, because of her bravery and everything that has happened, we end off the book with Psylocke officially joining the X-Men after everything she's done and her bravery and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
If she wants to be, and she's like, "Yep," and then they say, "Welcome to the team," and that's it.
Gotcha. What's next in the reading order?
I believe that is Daredevil. Yep, Daredevil 238.
All right. So what's funny about this is that Daredevil 238 in the app reading order is right before 213, and this event actually ends with Uncanny 214, as we mentioned earlier.
Right.
So I'm just gonna run through Daredevil very quickly. It is a tangential story where Sabretooth is basically taking run of the Morlock tunnels because there's no one living down there anymore. He runs into this gang of young toughs, and he chases them out, but takes their woman hostage, right? And things are implied that that might get a little bit not safe for work here. But it turns out that we flashed over to Daredevil, who is on patrol and sees some wild dogs duking it out for territory, and watches them fight in an alley. Daredevil comes and breaks up a mugging, but unbeknownst to him, the potential mugging victim is someone who was running a store that got destroyed, a little flower shop on 40th and 7th that was destroyed in Daredevil's fight with a nuke during Born Again. All right, so this happens after Born Again.
Oh, nice.
So, right. So, Daredevil's like, well, he still returns the guy's wallet, even though the guy really doesn't appreciate the fact that a mugging had been stopped. So, meanwhile, we have there's an interlude with these kids in New York who are whatchamacallit, who are kind of fighting and watching television, but they're getting mixed up with the wrong crowd. They're getting mixed up with the street gang type. Not really the most representative street gang types here, because there isn't a single person of color here anywhere in New York in the 80s. Just looking at this page of Tufts, maybe one. So this particular gang has made its way into the Morlock tunnels, having heard of the Morlock Massacre, and they're making a ruckus and challenging each other for different spaces under the in the tunnels, and they rouse Sabretooth, and Sabretooth comes out, and the leader of this wannabe gang is like, hide me, hide me. So Sabretooth, gosh. So Sabretooth basically gets called out by one of the young kids that we were introduced to, saying that this is New York, buddy. These streets are protected by Daredevil. Mess with us, and he'll find you and beat you up. Oh, so that basically sicks Sabretooth on Daredevil. And Daredevil is basically hunted by Sabretooth. Unbeknownst to Daredevil, Sabretooth has got, obviously, these animalistic senses and the ability to track. So he basically finds Daredevil without too much trouble. They duke it out, but Daredevil is left trying to save innocents who get caught in the middle of their fight. Meanwhile, we have the it's all an allegory for Sabretooth's animalistic instincts. So Daredevil is basically working on trying to take down Sabretooth, and Sabretooth is learning things about Daredevil. The parallel is a cat, a domesticated cat chasing a mouse in a home. And Daredevil and Sabretooth are on the verge of of ending their battle, and Daredevil puts Sabretooth through a wall, essentially ending the fight. But what ends up happening is that they discover, when Daredevil puts Sabretooth through a wall, the corpse of a dead Morlock who I guess had crawled into a space and ended up getting killed there in like a crawl space, or ended up dying in a crawl space. Sabretooth makes a move and goes after and kills the young, or at least tries to kill the young lady. That's right. Tries to kill the young lady he had taken hostage way back at the beginning of the book. Daredevil knocks him back, and Sabretooth makes a break for it while Daredevil tends to this young lady's wounds. And we find out that the young lady says that Sabretooth never really put a hand on her. It was it was weird that that he was scared, and that she sort of felt sorry for him. He's a man trapped in an animal's body, that he was confused, like he had an ache that he could never fill, basically likening him to a domesticated cat that kills for no reason because that's what it does instinctually. And Wolverine, and Daredevil basically ends the issue by saying, "That's why I was hunted, just because I exist." So that's that.
Yep. So as you can see, we're kind of, we'll probably talk about it in a minute once we finish this. But so now we're kind of getting into the strangest part of this, and not necessarily the most climactic into this whole affair. But Uncanny X-Men number 214. As you can see here, as a matter of fact, I will just do this and pull up the cover bigger, because that would make a little bit more sense. All right, the start of this issue. Weirdly enough, we're not in the tunnels. We're nowhere near where things were going on previously, but we are in some nightclub where Dazzler is putting on a show, putting on a clinic, some would say.
Right, I was about to say it's a Lila Cheney show, actually. And she's part of the band, as we mentioned earlier.
But it seems like, is that Lila Cheney? I thought that was Dazzler. Because you remember after we saw her do her thing, but okay, yeah.
I was about to say, when you open it, by the way, the art on this issue is by Barry Windsor Smith. He of Weapon X limited series in Marvel Comics Presents. So yeah, Lila's the lead singer, right? So she's the one with the guitar, and Dazzler's playing keyboards, and she's singing background. You can tell it's her by the earrings.
Sure. Right. Okay. But the X-Men are there, more specifically Wolverine, Storm, Rogue, and Psylocke, who were basically taking a psychic reading of the place um, and notices the psychic energy that is going on that seems to be coming from Dazzler, and apparently they were like, well, she's doing something, even though we know she's doing this light show, but there's other stuff going on. So they're basically there because they're warning her about the Marauders. Um, so that's why they're there. Um, Dazzler, or excuse me, I guess at this point, Malice, as Dazzler sees them out in the crowd and starts to shine the light on them and a few other things. They're basically she basically hits them with some light and some laser business. From Dazzler, or from Dazzler Malice, I guess I should probably say. And apparently there's some old business between Rogue and was that Rogue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's between Rogue and Dazzler from Dazzler's own series.
Right. And apparently that Dazzler, aka Malice, is not really forgotten about, so it's coming out here. Dazzler shoots a real big beam at Rogue, makes a mess out of her outfit, but they start getting into a fight. Storm, who happens to catch Dazzler, is like, all right, that's enough. Let's stop all this fighting. But Malice is like, well, all right, let me get out of this body, goes into another body, and takes over Wolverine, which didn't think he could do, but hey, it happens. So Wolverine starts going at folks, and specifically Dazzler, who hits him with some eye beams, which we had never seen from her before. But obviously she can concentrate light into into lasers, so stands the reason why she couldn't.
Let's say a pause. Lame that the Marvel Unlimited app does not have those 2 issues of Dazzler that has Rogue in them.
Mm.
It does, it skips over them.
Mm-hmm.
Continue.
Yeah, they probably get. I was imagining they get to it. Dazzler is probably not a priority for them at this point, sadly. But yeah, so actual Dazzler shoots at Malice Wolverine, who's coming at her, and Storm kind of takes out Dazzler, thinking she's still going through withdrawal or whatever the case may be. Wolverine collapses over, and Storm tells Rogue not to touch Wolverine to get away from him, and then it cuts to some police dude outside in a SWAT gear, who is outside the club, and some passerby, whoever is telling him, is like, yeah, it's the Mutant Dazzler or whatever. And he's got anti-mutant sentiments, so he's going through all his feels right now. But back into the club, Rogue gets taken over by Malice, looks like, and starts flying around. And Storm's like, okay, wait, first is Dazzler, now then Wolverine, now Rogue. It's getting taken over, and Rogue flies off because she wants to party or do whatever the case may be. Rogue Malice, whatever the case may be. And Storm gets it. It's like, that's not Rogue, that's somebody else, but we don't know who. And Betsy's like, oh, it's Malice from the Marauders, because, she caught a sense of that while Rogue was possessed. Dazzler kind of wakes up and decides to join in for a second, and they all talk for a minute, and they go after Malice. Meanwhile, we cut to Rogue, who's outside and causes some ruckus in front of cameras. And Dazzler gets her attention with a little light show. Rogue kind of comes after her again. I mean, Rogue Malice comes after her again, because you kind of say it like that. And blinds her, and Rogue comes through a window. Betsy tries to do her thing psychically to get Malice out of Rogue's body, which seems to happen. But Storm seems to be the next one on the list to get possessed after this happens. But it seems like oh, and actually Malice is overestimating Storm because she thinks that Storm still has her powers, which she does not. And she doesn't realize the fact that Storm doesn't have her powers until Rogue tries to exert control back over on her body, over her own body, rips off the choker off of her neck, and because this is Storm, she can't be tempted. She's a G like that. Then we cut back outside to a reporter, and then we cut back to Dazzler and Storm talking, and Dazzler talking about I need to turn myself in, and Storm's like, I don't know why you would do that because this was not your fault. And she's also saying like, do you really still want the spotlight? To which Dazzler's like, yeah, I mean that's not fair, but probably not wrong. Then Dazzler asks like, why was the Marauders trying to pick on her? And Storm kind of explains whatever reasoning, which I don't know if that was a valid reason, but it was a reason nonetheless. Because basically she was like, yeah, you have considerable power and you're a friend, so therefore that's why she kind of came after you.
Mm-hmm.
And that you were the means to get to the rest of them. I'm assuming if the rest of it failed, or even if the rest of the Marauders hadn't failed, I guess. So they still talking. They continue to talk, and Dazzler's like, hey, if I, do you still take me after all of this? And they were like, yeah, cool, we're friends. And Wolverine for some strange reason, comes after Storm's throat.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's thinking that Wolverine got possessed again. But it turns out not to be the case, and Wolverine just kind of lost control for no reason. But Wolverine says, like, no, I smelled malice on you, so that's why I went after her. But Psylocke was like, no, you were wrong. Storm had a handle on things, and she took back over control of herself, and everything was fine, so you kind of messed up. And this is pretty much where the issue ends, because after they're talking, they're basically just like,
Well, what I was going to add is Storm fights off Malice, but
right.
Malice is not defeated. She basically just retreats to another host, and that's where we end the issue. Malice is going to be an ongoing thorn in the X-Men side for a long time. So this is not the last we see of this Marauder.
Right, that's right. Because we see at the end of the issue that the police dude with the machine gun, or I guess he's a machine gun. I'm telling you, just you could put this right now and just be some gun-toting stupid person. But anyway, with Malice's necklace, with Malice's choker on him, and monologuing about, hey, yeah, you didn't win, and Wolverine was right, and basically I'll be back, and that's where the issue ends.
Right. And we have now hit the acknowledged ending of the Mutant Massacre, except Roddykat forwarded to me the I guess it's the trade paperback collection of the Mutant Massacre. It actually includes many more issues that include the aftermath that we are not talking about tonight because we've been on for a while.
Well, we're not going to talk about that at all, because I think it's just, well, some of it's like a lot of it's like aftermath stuff from what I remember, because like Fantastic Four versus X-Men is after the fact. It has nothing to do with the Marauders, and so is X-Men versus Avengers. Like both of those have to do tangentially with the story, because Fantastic Four versus X-Men are about basically the X-Men trying to save Kitty, and they're going to the Fantastic Four for help, but then a fight starts, and all kind of confusion happens, and Franklin's there, and this is where, when we talked about Fantastic Four, was it Fantastic Four or was it X-Men? It was Fantastic Four plus X-Men from a couple of months ago. this is where Kitty and Franklin's relationship or friendship starts
Right.
because he's there and they're battling and all kinds of stuff. But this is where basically where they get friendly. And X-Men versus Avengers is basically surrounding the trial of Magneto because
Right.
Magneto's the head master, and so he goes up to the World Court, and obviously the X-Men are going to be there, and the Avengers are there on the other side of that because Magneto's to them is still a villain and needs to be brought to justice, and of course a fight ensues from that and whatever else happens. So it's not necessarily Mutant Massacre, directly tied to, with the exception of Fantastic Four versus X-Men.
Right.
But that being the case, yeah, like I said, we're not going to get into all that because that basically goes off into other territory, and we are at the end of Mutant Massacre proper, which doesn't seem like a very proper end because there are still some folks that are still accounted for, and the situation in the Morlock, is at this point is what it is. So, yeah, that's where we are with Mutant Massacre. So what are your thoughts?
Well, a couple of things, and take this from someone who is a big Uncanny X-Men reader. Obviously, I've always joked and harped on my collection that goes back to Dark Phoenix till now. And but I'm not the most well-read Uncanny X-Men fan, apparently, because as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the stuff I bought is back issues, and basically bought them, flipped through them, and then put them away because I bought them as a back issue. So thank goodness for Marvel Unlimited, because now I'm going back and and in a sense, these evergreen episodes that we're recording now, we are going over an event that I knew about but hadn't read. So I've learned a lot of the small details of what occurs in these issues. And what's funny is that this aftermath of the Mutant Massacre is far-reaching, right? The after effects are far-reaching, specifically in the X books, not necessarily maybe the other tie-in books, but definitely in the X books, because this led to basically the first big X-Men lineup change for the all new, all different team. For the giant size X-Men team, basically, but for Cyclops leaving and Thunderbird dying and maybe Sunfire leaving, this is a pretty big lineup change where Shadowcat, Colossus, and whatchamacallit, and Nightcrawler are all taken off the board, and instead we have basically the what becomes the Fall of the Mutants team, because in upcoming issues, we discussed Dazzler joining the team and Psylocke joining the team in 2 of the issues surrounding Mutant Massacre. In 2 more issues, no, 3 more issues. No, actually 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, it actually is a while to go still. But in several, in only a few issues in the future, like 5 issues really, Havoc joins the team, and this is the team that makes its way through the Fantastic Four and X-Men crossover, and the X-Men versus the Avengers crossover, as well as Fall of the Mutants. So this particular iteration of the X-Men makes its way through some of the most famous 80s storylines coming out of coming as a in the aftermath of the Mutant Massacre. This is really I guess it's not understated, because they call it the first X-Men event and still the most brutal. And I think going forward, I may still be recommending people who want to pick up X-Men actually give this a read, even though it seems so antiquated. It seems harder to read. This is really where, I think the history of kind of seismic change in the X-Men starts. Like where a big lineup change kind of is set up. So, looking back on this now, I'm like, oh, so this is how that particular group of X-Men that I really fell in love with came to be. So it's it's really an interesting storyline. It really is, and it's really intriguing to see what came out of it. Obviously, we see Wolverine versus Sabretooth, and that's obviously something very, very big coming out of this.
Right. And yeah, that's the one a lot of people know about. But yeah, for myself, yeah, like I said, I was reading this in kind of real time because, like I said, I was definitely reading XFactor at the time because I was like, oh shoot, they're bringing back the OGs, and especially I think I was reading Fantastic Four at the time, and that's when Jean Grey got unearthed, and it was like, yeah, to be continued, XFactor, and all that kind of started from there, and obviously big Avengers fan, which has nothing to do with this right now, but they come to play later on in the X-Men Avengers stuff. But yeah, this was like, oh man, like even with what I knew of the X-Men coming to this, because I had read some, and obviously like I was reading like Secret Wars, where they played a big part of, a lot of that kind of inferred my interest in them, before this and coming into this. Now, obviously, this is after Secret Wars and Secret Wars 2, where Secret Wars 2 is like, but for the first big event, like this was like, wow, like they was really out here messing stuff up. So this is basically what got my interest, back into the X-Men at the time, even though I was kind of coming and forward, and actually even after this, I was kind of still coming and going with it now, because it's like, all right, yeah, I'm more of an Avengers fan than X-Men, so after a while, I kind of left it out. So that's why there are big holes in my X-Men history. But some of the events I still kind of hold dear, like this one and Fall of the Mutants, and especially Extinction Agenda, which I don't think we might get time to do because of new books are coming back, but it is what it is. That being said, I guess real quick clicks of the week if you got one. I know there's a lot of books.
Psylocke.
Oh, so 213?
Yep. I think, and I think 210 comes in a close second. Because that's seriously, man, it's some really, really intense stuff going on, with all the bodies hitting the floor,
I see what you did there.
Seriously. Like, the body count is just racking up, and it's just, it's so intense. But I think the Psylocke issue where she proves her mettle, where she fights off Sabretooth and shows a good head on her shoulders during in the midst of it, I think really, really goes a long way to making that click of the week for me.
Yeah.
But to say, I was just going to say, I was just going to add, but I have to say that I think the very first issue is 210.
Yeah, I can't have 210. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To start this whole ball rolling, like, yeah, this one stuff kind of gets off. Yeah, I also enjoyed 213 because, like, this was the issue that made me, even before, Body Swap, Psylocke, like, this is what made me like her a whole lot. Like her a whole lot back then. It was like, okay, because coming into this, she kind of comes off as, like, kind of, not necessarily milk shoppers, but she's kind of plays the background a lot and unsure of herself and this and that. But this is kind of the one that was like, yeah, I'm just like, this is where she kind of starts coming into her own, with her power set at the time. But I think I might actually go with probably 212. Actually, no. Actually, weirdly enough, it's either going to be 212 or probably Thor 374.
Okay.
And that's a weird one because it's like, I was not being a big Thor fan, but what happens in that book with him, even though it kind of doesn't have, it's in service of helping out with Mutant Massacre, but doesn't necessarily have to do with Mutant Massacre, meaning that, what Hela did to him and she finally telling him, him coming across the Marauders and fighting everybody and finding out he's getting weak and all that, and then at the end, obviously, not obviously, I can't stop saying that, but when he was like so mad that he was like, all right, I gotta let it out, and calls out Hela, and that whole page where the swipe fire is just sweeping through everything. You know, that's a pretty great cinematic flair even for a comic book.
Oh, for real? Like I said, Thor going Thor.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm thinking 374 is probably if not that, or it's either going to be Uncanny 212.
I was about to say from the Simonson fan on the panel, right? I give you props for that, man.
Yeah, so it's either going to be Thor 373 more than likely, and with a shout out to Uncanny. Yeah, 374. Excuse me. Yeah, 374 and Uncanny 212, because that's when like, okay, we've taken some lumps and now we got to kind of turn this around at the end of it.
Gotcha. Absolutely.
So, all right, you got any closing thoughts about this one?
Oh, just as a quick thing, in the fandom article, and I didn't actually know this because I think I probably read it and just forgot it. Originally, under motive, originally it was stated that the massacre was held to remove, quote, wild card mutants such as the Morlocks. It was later revealed that due to his arrival 20 years prior to the present Earth 616, the Dark Beast from Age of Apocalypse was responsible for the creation of the Morlocks using his world's Mr. Sinister's technology. The 616 Sinister wanted all traces of his unwarranted material removed and had the Marauders carry out the extermination of the Morlocks. Interesting.
Yep. And also there's some stuff that came out of this that ended up inferring stuff to X-Men stories later on. But also apparently under trivia, you probably saw that they were going to use Nimrod in this story, which they had used prior to this, but they was going to plan on using Nimrod to kill off the Morlocks with the Marauders, but this was later changed and the Morlocks were created, and save for Sabretooth and Vertigo, used as the team.
Yeah, they were previously existing characters, so.
Right. So,
interesting.
But I read that part. Did you read? I was like, I was like, I kind of almost want to read it. Because, as a matter of fact, when I looked this page up and I saw that, I was like, I may possibly want to check this out. But this goes through a couple of different things that I don't know about at the time. So I don't want to do that to myself.
I was about to say, you know what? Even, it sucks because we all know that, if it wasn't for quarantine giving us a little bit of extra time on our hands, we ordinarily we would have to make much more of an effort to make time to read stuff like this, because we normally would be inundated with new books every week. And we're always having trouble. What's my ongoing joke, and Matt Wang's ongoing joke? I usually only get to read 5 or 6 books a week.
You average 5 a week. Yeah.
Right. Because of a hectic schedule. Otherwise, we get our review copies and we only have so much time to read them before we record and broadcast on Thursday evening. So, it's usually about 5 or 6, maybe 7 at best a week. So, otherwise we really don't have a lot of time to read back issues, but it's been a pleasure to be able to catch up on these things. And this is what helped convince me. I mean, I think I had done it. I had ordered Marvel Unlimited, but this has convinced me that this is definitely a worthwhile investment, just to have easy access to books that are not in my collection.
Right.
It's obviously a waste to read all these Uncanny issues because I own all of them. But obviously there's ones that I don't own that go back further, and all these tie-in issues, all these events. I don't own these, or I own maybe an issue or two, and I missed out on the rest. So, not that I'm harping on, we're not sponsored by Marvel Unlimited or anything like that, but it's definitely been a worthwhile investment.
Right. We definitely use the service, and definitely have used the service. But yeah, this is definitely not an ad. So, so we can go quickly into this, because we've been running for almost 4 hours.
Wow, we may have to split this episode.
We might. I'll see about that. I don't know. Just, y'all will be all right. Let's get to the last ad read, sir.
Our last ad read of the night, because we've been going a long way, is keep our podcast free by shopping at Amazon. Visit cspn.us, then click the Keep Our Podcast Free link at the top of the page. From there, scroll down and click on the Amazon link to shop. Purchase items from Amazon as you normally would, whether it's books, music, electronics, jewelry, apparel, etc. For every purchase made on Amazon through our link, Amazon sends the CSPN a payment. That helps us keep the Comic Book Chronicles podcast free for our listeners at no extra cost to you. Amazon.com through CSPN.us. Do it today.
All right, folks, and here we go at the end of another Comic Book Chronicles. Thank you, each and every one of you, for coming out. I have been Roddykat. You can find me at Roddykat on Twitter and I was going to say Instagram, but whatever, sure, why not? News Nerds Need on Twitter and CB Caps on Instagram. Agent_70 on Twitter and Instagram. PC_dirt on Twitter, Pop Culture Net on Twitter, popculturenetwork.com, and his umbrella sites therein. Also, the Vine Alternative Byte, BYTE, under the term comic reviews, no vowels. Tim, DOGD98 on Twitter, CB Cron on Twitter, that is the Comic Book Chronicles Twitter account, The Click Nation on Twitter, theclicknation.com, that's the KLIQNATION, all one word. Also, you can find him over at Comic Book Resources, where he's doing his main thing, writing his face off over there. You can find this here podcast on the Cold Slither Podcast Network, CSPN.us.
Do it today.
You hopefully will be able to find on YouTube somewhere the Cold Slither episode of G.I. Joe, even though it's not out there with the other stuff. But hey, guess what? G.I. Joe is out there on and they're streaming. So go check out those old, G.I. Joe episodes just for giggles, while you're reading this or something.
Yep.
That's not a plug. That's just saying it's a thing you could do. You ain't got nothing else to do. Also, you can find this at your podcast perusal place of choice, whether it be Google Play, Apple iTunes, aka Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the Cold Slither Podcast Network's SoundCloud page. We will be back next week, maybe with some more new books if they're worth talking about. We're definitely starting to get ramped back up with new comic book releases, as we have seen today, and we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. So we will let you know whether whether it's going to be some new comics or whether we're going to hit up another event. More than likely, if it's looking like new comics is going to be back in the style, so we'll see. But we'll let you know on social media.
Right. We may be alternating depending upon what's being released because of the way they are patterning the release of new books. Mm-hmm. Because they're not trying to go back to business as normal, obviously. So we may be interspersing these evergreen topics, going back in the back issues, in the back issue bins. We're interspersing them amongst reviews of new books.
Exactly. And on that note, like I said, we'll let you know on social media. And also worth noting that I forgot to say at the top of the show, this is show episode 365. We have done a whole year's worth of episodes as of this one.
Damn. Woo!
So you can go back right now and start off and be like, and watch and listen to one a day, or watch one a day. Well, listen to one a day.
Yeah, seriously.
And there might be actually the account may or may not be off, so it might be somewhere out there hidden that we need to pull together. But more than likely, this is the official count.
Yeah, 365.
You can't handle the truth.
Exactly. So with that, this has been the Comic Book Chronicles. Peace.
Peace. One.
I love it when a plan comes together.